Good afternoon, everyone, friends, neighbors, to my honorable colleagues of the Durham City Council, to the city staff. It is February 20th, 1 o'clock p.m. I'd like to officially call this work session of the Durham City Council to order, that we might faithfully discharge the business of the people of Durham. His Honor, the mayor is traveling. He did receive an excused absence from this council at a prior meeting. His plan was to try and join. He wanted it as a contingency, but spoke to him a little while ago. RDU is operating, so he did fly out this morning, but he is in transit, so he'll be monitoring from YouTube. Let me thank the staff on behalf of the mayor and the entire city for making this meeting possible, working behind the scenes to allow us to still go forward. Our hope is that all Durhamites are safe and warm at home and restricting travel to absolutely what is necessary while we thaw out. Let me also, on behalf of the mayor and the city, send our regards and thanks to the governor, Governor Stein, whose declaration of the state of emergency actually laid the legal framework for us to conduct this meeting virtually today. Absent his declaration, this would have been a bit legally fraught for us to do it this way. Those of you who were with us during the pandemic will remember the glory days, if I can call them those, of these virtual meetings when they were our only way of meeting for some time. So to our new colleagues who are, is this your first time doing this, welcome. And to our veterans, welcome back to this platform to conduct the business of the people of Durham. Madam Clerk, good afternoon, ma'am. If you would please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Williams is accepted an excused absence for today. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
Here.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Cook. Councilmember Freeman. And Councilmember Rist. Thank you.
All right. Is Councilmember Rist here? Was there, I'm trying to, okay. We haven't received any messages from Councilmember Cook, have we? Rist, have we, Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. If a member of staff is probably text him or call him, somebody just make sure he's not having technical difficulties getting on. I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
With that, we're going to go ahead with announcements by the council. I'll call on Councilmember Cook. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I will be very brief. I just wanted to send a word of thanks both to the staff who made this meeting possible. I know it was a bit of a last minute situation, and I know a lot of hard work went into that. And also to our city staff who have been working on clearing the roads and ensuring that everyone's safety is cared for. There have been a lot of traffic incidents. I know Mayor Pro Tem just alluded to this. Please do be as careful as possible, only travel if you need to travel. And I really appreciate all of our first responders and everyone else who has had to go to work and continue on about their business in order to keep the rest of the city safe. So thank you to those folks. And I do want to remind my colleagues that I will be leaving at 3 p.m. I know we do have some question or some time for questions about budgetary requests. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll leave that to your discretion, but if folks do have questions for me that can't be addressed off screen and would like to do so, just want to remind y'all that I will be out at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Baker, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I would just say ditto to what Councilmember Cook said. Thank you so much to staff and for everyone who works for the city, who is keeping things running and out in the cold and doing the hard work. We are so grateful for everything that you do. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Freeman, good afternoon. Councilmember Freeman, do you have any announcements? You're muted.
Good afternoon. I would just say thank you as well to our workers out there keeping us safe and making sure our roads are clear, and to all the staff that are getting it done today.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rich, good afternoon. Good to see you. We're doing announcements. So we'll yield to you.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm a little bit slow in the uptake on my first virtual meeting. Sorry about that. Good to see everybody. Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem, for holding down the fort and moderating today's meeting. I want to echo everybody else's comments. Really appreciate all the work our staff done, working overtime, working hard in the snow event. It's pretty slippery out there, pretty dangerous on many roadways. So hope folks are safe out there. And again, thanks to our staff and the folks at Duke Energy for what they do to make sure everyone has power. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Glad you're safe. Thanks for jumping on. Very briefly, council members, yeah, let me just associate myself with everything you've said. Thanks to our first responders, particularly, and to our city staff. The city doesn't shut down, although City Hall may physically be shut down. The city doesn't shut down. So to City Manager Ferguson and to your entire team, the entire organization under you, just our profound thanks on behalf of the city for what you do. Much of it goes unheralded and unreported, but we know as a council, and we want you to know that the people of the city greatly appreciate it. And please, y'all, stay safe out there. My only announcement is congratulations to our mayor on what I thought was a great state of the city, to our council members who stormed the stage and rocked the crowd. Councilmember Riss, I didn't know you had moves like that, man.
You inspired me.
No, I looked to the right. You jumped up on the stage. I had to use the steps. So just thanks to all the residents and citizens who came out to the State of the Union, who watched online. And I look forward. I heard the mayor's challenge and appeal to all of us as residents and citizens, to us as council as well. I look forward to working with all of you and him in the coming year to make the state of our city even better, more better than what it already is. Thank you, colleagues, for some great announcements. Let's get to the work now. At this time, I'll yield to our executive staff for any priority items, and I'll start with the city manager. Good afternoon, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. I did see the Councilmember Caballero's hand is raised, so I didn't know if she had comments.
Thank you for helping me with that, because I have a strip. Councilmember Caballero, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. We've lost some muscle memory around this. Just wanted to say thank you as well, and then ask colleagues to see if we could get a presentation from our immigrant and refugees coordinator, Coco Nayo, just goes by Nayo. He's housed in the county, and so was hoping that he could come to our March 20th work session and do. He is supposed to share what his work has been per our ILA, and wanted to see kind of just temperature check around that.
Sure, I'll pull the house. Colleagues, any objections? All right, seeing none, let's please extend that invitation. I look forward to that report.
Thank you. And then otherwise, just want to thank staff, including the folks at City Hall, who have to be there to make this meeting happen. So while we are virtual, there are folks who have to be there to turn on all the equipment and run it and make sure that we sound and look good as a city. So thanks to those folks who drove to get this going over there, and then everyone else who's made the city keep going. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you. Well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. I know that make me sound good. I don't know what they can do for my looks, but I appreciate it. Mr. City Manager, we'll yield to you. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. First, want to thank you and acknowledge the compliments for staff. I am sitting safe and warm, but many of your staff are out there in these conditions, making our community safe for drivers, for our residents, ensuring their safety. And I will certainly relay your kind comments to them. I'll just note in advance of my priority items that we will have a call with our colleagues at the county and emergency management professionals today at 4, just to assess what conditions will be like. Council and the public can expect to hear from us later this evening, as will our employees, about any plans that impact tomorrow. But again, I want to thanks and acknowledge the efforts of all the staff for the community, and also appreciate your comments about this meeting. I've had very little to do with helping this meeting happen, but there are a number of people, you know who they are, who support us in this space. So thank you for that. I have several priority items that I'll read into the record. First, agenda item number 9, the fourth quarter crime report. There is a presentation that will be made during today's work session. A second item, the recognition of GoDurham Million Milers. This was a recognition that was previously planned for today, but we've postponed that. And then finally, agenda item number 24, a discussion item for City Council budget request for the FY 25-26 year. We have added a supplemental item to the agenda to allow space for council to discuss those items. Those are all of my priority items, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Colleagues, I'll entertain a motion to receive the manager's priority items.
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion in the second. All in favor will indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? All right, Mr. Manager, thank you. I have your items noted as 9 and 24. Thank you much. Madam City Attorney, there you are. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. It's good to see you. The City Attorney's Office has no priority items today.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, good afternoon. I'll yield to you for any priority items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. I did want to announce the two board and committee appointments. For the Human Relations Commission, there is consensus in support of Kaylee A. Greener, but the Planning Commission appointment does not have consensus right now. There's Caitlin Kempsky, who received 3 votes, and Michael J. Young, 1 vote, Ramsey Ritchie, 1 vote, and then Evan Bradley, 1 vote.
Madam Clerk, I'll switch mine to Evan Bradley for now.
Okay. That's 3. That's 3 for Evan.
I'll switch mine to Evan as well. Madam
Okay.
Clerk.
Okay, thank you. Then we have reached consensus. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'll accept a motion for the clerk's report and priority item.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion in the second. All in favor will indicate by aye.
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 Those opposed? All right. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, at this time, I'll turn now to the reading of our reading to the record, if I can get my iPad to work. Our administrative consent items. For our viewing public, administrative consent items are items that we now take an opportunity to do a deep dive in as a council. These items, if passed on to the Monday's night meeting, can be passed with 1 vote. Any of these items can be pulled by a member of the council or a member of the public, and I will now read them for the record. Administrative consent items, City Clerk's Office, item number 1, Durham Planning Commission appointment. Item number 2, Human Relations Commission appointment. Under departmental items, Audit Services Department. Item number 3, Procurement Card P-Card Performance Audit, January 2025. City Clerk's Office, item number 4, Boards, Committees, Commissions, and Task Force Calendar Year 2024 Annual Attendance Reports. Item number 5, Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau doing business as Discover Durham 2024 Annual Report. Under our Community Development Department, item number 6, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Program Grant to Project Ordinance for FY 2021 through 2022.
I'd like to do that one.
Was that Councilmember Cook? Was that Councilmember Cook?
Yes, as always. Yes.
It's okay. That's why we're here. Item number 6 is pulled. Under General Service Department, item number 7, Public Works Operations Center Renovation Construction Manager at-risk agreement with C.T. Wilson Construction Company, Inc. Under Neighborhood Improvement Services Department, item number 8, Housing Appeals Board Annual Report for Fiscal Year 2024. Under the Police Department, item number 9, this is a presentation, 2024 Fourth Quarter Crime Report. Our Public Works Department, item number 10, Amendment number 2 to Services Contract for Water Quality Web Portal Repair and Maintenance for the Stormwater Quality Program. Under our Transportation Department, item number 11, Supplemental Agreement number 3 to Master Agreement 18906 with Exalt Engineering, PC for multimodal safety improvements to Guest Road.
Mayor Pro Tem, I don't want to pull that. Just want to say, like, yes, that's great stuff. So I'm excited about that.
Agreed. Thank you for that. Item number 12, Supplemental Agreement number 5 to Master Agreement 18925 with WSP USA, Inc. for design of multimodal safety improvements on city-maintained roads.
I do want to pull that one.
Well, item number 12 is pulled. Item number 13, Supplemental Agreement number 3 to Master Agreement 18919 with Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. for design of two-way conversion of Roxboro Street and Mangum Street.
Again, don't want to pull that one, but that makes a lot of people happy. So I'm glad to see that on the agenda. Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem.
Indeed. Thank you. Item number 14, Second Amendment to the contract with RATP Dev USA, Inc. for the management, operation, and maintenance of the GoDurham fixed route transit system.
I want to pull that one.
Yeah. All right. Councilmember Freeman, I think that was you and Councilmember Baker?
Baker, yes.
Item number 14 is pulled. Item number 15, GoDurham FY 2024 Annual Report. Item number 16, governing agreements for the 2025 through 2028 City of Durham Transportation On-Call Professional Services, Engineering Services, and Data Collection. Under our Water Management Department, item number 17, construction contract award to Carolina Civil Works, Inc. for the 2025 water and sewer point repair. Item number 18, construction contract to Terraflex Group, LLC, for the FY25 unscheduled pipeline and plant repairs project. Item number 19, construction award to Terraflex Group, LLC, for the Albany Peachtree Gaddis Waterline Replacement Project. Item number 20, construction contract to Carolina Civil Works, Inc. for the FY25 unscheduled pipeline and plant repairs project. Under presentations, but from our Budget and Management Services Department, FY 2024 to 25 second quarter financial report, that's slated to go for 20 minutes. And from our Police Department, item number 22, Police Satisfaction Survey Results presentation by ETC Institute, slated to go for 20 minutes. And for our Monday night general business meeting, public hearings, we have slated from our City County Planning Department, item number 23, Clegg Drive Street closing, and citizens matters to be heard at 1 p.m. Another supplemental items from Budget and Management Services, City Council budget request FY 2025 to 26, which was alluded to by our manager in his priority items. Colleagues, that ends the reading of our published agenda for the day. I have items number 6, 12, and 14 pulled by my reckoning. Mr. Manager.
Can you pull item 15 as well?
Item number 15. Item number 15, GoDurham FY 2024 annual report is pulled. Colleagues, anything else? All right, I have, Mr. Manager, by my reckoning, items number 6, 12, 14, and 15 pulled.
I concur.
All right, thank you, colleagues. I will go ahead and try and dispose of these. Well, of course, you have opportunity to exhaust all the questions you want, but I'm going to go ahead and knock these out before our presentations, if that's all right. So we'll start with item number 6. Councilmember Cook, I believe you pulled that.
I did. We don't have any citizens matters?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
What? Councilmember Caballero talked about the muscle memory. All right, I have for citizens matters, DeWarren Langley, Derek Rowe, Derek Rowe's pulled an item. I have DeWarren Langley and Kai Riedel for citizens comments. And Madam Clerk, if there's anyone else, please help me. And thank you for the catch, Councilmember Cook. I appreciate that. Madam Clerk, if we can make Mr. Langley present.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the Durham City Council, City Manager, City Clerk, and City staff. I would like to first begin my comment with a moment of silence for the young male of color. He was a black male shot, a black 17-year-old teenager shot in Cornwallis on last Sunday. So I would like to observe a moment of silence. Thank you. And while that young person did not lose their life, I again come before you as the executive director of the Charles Hamilton Houston Foundation, where we offer a continuum of intense and career-focused programs, services, and mentorship to prepare boys and young men of color for success in school and the workforce. And Durham has a lot of potential. We have a lot of opportunity, but where we are falling short is a strategy and consistent investment in our young people to help them find their purpose, develop a strategy, and have consistent support in order to realize their potential and achieve economic stability and mobility in our community or wherever they may choose to be in this great nation. And I believe you all have a unique opportunity, especially after listening to the council member request for the upcoming budget. We have an opportunity to do something bold, to show our young people we believe in them, we're willing to invest in them, and we're willing to do the hard work to ensure that they have the bright futures that we so often proclaim with words. But we need to match that commitment with action. And I know that we're in tight budgetary times, and I was looking at the budget documents and I saw where 1 penny on the tax will yield about $4.3 million. And so I'm here to ask you all to make that commitment of adding 1 cent to our tax in order for us to generate $4.3 million for the investment in young people in this community, especially boys and young men of color who predominantly are represented in fact and data points that we don't want them in terms of perpetrators of crime, victims of crime, dropout, short and long-term suspension, all of those things. And it's not because they are inherently deficient, it's because we're not doing enough to support their growth, development, and success. So I ask council to consider that request and making a bold and courageous step in investing in our young people so that they can have the future that is possible in this community or whatever community that they choose to live in. Thank you.
Mr. Langley, thank you so much for being with us today. All right, Madam Clerk, if you can make Kai Rydell or Rydell present.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. I know there are a lot of important issues in Durham right now, so thank you for your time. And also, Mayor Pro Tem, you got my last name pronounced so accurately. That was amazing. So thank you. You've heard a good bit from me voicing collective and far-reaching concerns that we're way off track with Durham's creative and cultural economy. The overriding concern being that the architecture of decisions is continuing to hurt Durham's creative and cultural and economic present and potential. Topics during our time conversations have covered special event funding, money lost or extracted by city organizations, and much more. The most recent issue concerning myself and others is general services spending a total of $480,000 to basically outsource a cultural roadmap for Durham with a schedule that is already years overdue and what appears to be extremely over budget. They've already spent $150,000 on the first phase with AMS Consulting. That, for some reason, that relationship broke. Now they're spending another $250K on MJR consultants with another $80K in community engagement. So for many of us, this continued kind of outsourcing is way off target. We again seem to be offloading the responsibility of Durham's future onto external and usually out-of-state organizations that, for all intents and purposes, interview people like myself and repackage it just to sell it back to us at a premium price without much insight and really actual roadmaps that we can't develop ourselves. And there's some of us that would rather see Durham make their own our own roadmaps and fail than be held stationary and paying large sums of money for information we already have. And it's just not confidence building when one looks at the amount of studies and roadmaps that have taken place in Durham over the last 4 years with basically very little to show for it. The decision tree on this, the nice and overall intelligent people at DCAB have sat back and greenlighted all this, even when some seem to not agree with it. Then this came to council and was cleared as well. And this just seems to be, and I have nothing personal against DCAB, but it's just continuing proof that they need to be cultural advisors and not cultural and economic decision makers, especially financially. Durham's creative economy is closing in on about $1 million lost between overspending, financial mistakes, extraction from funding sources, lost opportunities, sometimes just bad choices. I know you have a lot going on, but we need you more involved with these decisions, please. We need a proper conversation with you, the creative economic community, about all these issues, because we may be missing something, but as it stands right now, we have no idea what that something is. So I have a group of people. We're going to be putting together an online forum about this. Everyone on this call will be obviously invited, but we need a more focused path about how to solve some of these issues and some of these decision trees, because they're hurting Durham in ways that are going to be hard to recover from. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Madam Clerk, was there anyone else? I only had 2 on my end, but I want to make sure we didn't miss anyone.
No,
else?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, there were only 2.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to thank our residents and neighbors who came to speak today. Just a reminder to those of you that are watching in the city, your council is available to hear what you want to say. Thursdays at 1 p.m. in our work session, there's a a point on our agenda for citizens' comments on generally whatever you want to talk to your council about. So we invite our residents to go to our website and sign up in advance to do that. If you show up that day, there are a limited number of spots beyond those who have signed up that you can occupy to talk to your council at our work sessions at 1 o'clock. So we need to thank our residents who came out today. All right, I think now we'll go to pulled items, and I have item number 6 and Councilmember Cook. I believe that's you, and I'll yield.
That is, thank you. I have a few questions on this item. The first is that this is from fiscal year 21 to 22, and my understanding is that the way that these reimbursements happen is that we estimate how much we will receive in these type of grants for the year moving forward, and then the following year we have an actualization of how much money we do receive. So I'm just wondering why we are hearkening back, or why this amended appropriation is going back to 2021, 2022 fiscal year.
This is Reginald Johnson, Community Development Director. I'm not able to put on my video. Okay, here we go. So the one of the two, you are correct in terms of the process, in terms of reconciliation, in terms of why the process for us making these adjustments. One of the things that had happened here that we discovered an error in the reporting, that Genesis was that there was an error in some pool reports. And so we were seeking to correct that because that affects one of the payments for the projects that we're doing now.
Was this something that we found, we being staff, or was this one of the things that our consultant that we hired was taking a look at?
Oh, this was staff. This was staff.
And is there any issue with correcting something several years out?
No. So one of the pieces that we have, so it's two steps to the process. One is that we have to make payments, and then we get reimbursed, and we have to make draws through the IDIS system. And so what this is related to is to making sure that we can make the proper draws in the IDIS system for the particular project that's focused on. So there's not a problem. There's not a problem with it, but we need to do it to be able to complete the project, and as well as the process.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all my questions for the first half, but the second part is that we saw a decrease in income realized by almost $110,000. Can you explain that decrease? And also maybe account for why? I'm assuming it's part of the same error in calculation as the increase entitlement, but why we're going back several years, but I would like to see why we have a decrease there.
Okay, so I would have to go back and specifically look on the decrease, but one of the things that we have to recognize is that we have an estimate that we have in terms of our program income, and that's income that we will receive based upon the payback from loans or the disposition of property or main things, and it's really an estimate, and then we have to make sure that we adjust it at the end of the year to what actually happens, and we have to pull reports to be able to do that, and so that's where the comes in, the difference comes in. Quite often it is a discrepancy, a difference, I would say. I wouldn't say a discrepancy, but a difference, because the actual, you could have a major loan that comes in, so you have more, or you could have not the payments that we projected based on the previous years, so you have a decrease.
So I'm just a bit confused, because the way I'm reading this paragraph from the memo, our entitlement allocation was increased by $31,000 as a result of amended appropriation from HUD. Additionally, we reported and then $193,000 in program income. However, this amount should be amended to indicate $84,000 in program income that was realized, which is a decrease of $100,000. So can you just help me understand, because there are two different things happening here. Can you help me understand the difference between these two, and then whether or not this sort of was all found together, or I'm just a little bit confused how we're going back to fiscal year 2021 and we have ostensibly maybe two errors that we're showing.
Yes, we do. And I'll ask Maggie Carnegie to come on and explain a little bit more detail.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Cook, fellow council members. So regarding the issue presented, yes, Councilmember Cook, we had an increased appropriation from HUD by that $31,051 amount. That was an increase to our entitlement that during the last GPO we completed, it was missed. There was an error made in that last GPO where we didn't account for that correct entitlement amount. Regarding the program income or the revenue that we actualized, again, there was an error in how we pulled reports that reflected the revenue we actualized for that year. And that is what's resulting in that decrease amount of $109,006.84. And so this is the time where we need to make sure that our entitlement appropriation and program income actualized is accurate to support some budget on our general ledger, and it will support us being able to finalize some draws and receive reimbursement from HUD for some projects we have funded within the 2021-2022 CDBG grant.
Okay, so when you're talking about that moving forward, is this something like we went back and did like a self-imposed audit of the past 5 years sort of thing, and these were just two things that we found, they just happened to be from the same fiscal year? Is there a reason why we're looking at fiscal year 2021?
That is correct. We did an internal look to see if we had any inconsistencies. We found it as we were trying to, again, draw some funds and receive reimbursement for a project that's funded with CDBG from the 2021 program year.
Okay, and so we've done like, we're not going to then see that we have also miscalculations in 2022, 23, even though those have already gotten reimbursed. We would already have gotten reimbursements for those as well because we're past that year. We're not going to see this come up again, I guess is my question. Y'all have gone through all of these years now and looked at the accounting.
So I would state that this GPO is just specifically for this program year. And I guess I would preface with the CDBG grant has a 7-year period of performance. So the period of performance for this grant year will not conclude until September 1st of 2028. So we are well within the period of performance for this grant. Again, there's just some specific projects we are trying to complete final draws from so the city can be reimbursed for expenses that have been incurred by the subrecipient. And we do foresee that there may be subsequent GPOs that need to be done for other program years, but we were kind of targeting and focused on this fiscal year or this program year in particular.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council members, anyone else on this item?
I was just gonna follow up and just ask which project and which recipient we're talking about for this.
This particular project is the Ross Road project, and Reinvestment Partners is the developer.
Thank you.
Your colleagues, anyone else? All right, item number 6 is disposed of. Colleagues, a lot of moving parts here virtually. So I want to round back to the clerk. The clerk would like to make an amendment to her report. So Madam Clerk, I'll yield to you at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I did want to confirm that we had 4 votes for Evan Bradley, There was Councilmember Caballero, the Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and Councilmember Rist after everything shook out. So I did want to make that on the record.
All right, and it hasn't changed the outcome of the vote.
It has not changed the
Okay.
outcome.
All right, in the chair's opinion, no substantive impact to the vote itself, so we don't need to revote again. We'll just make the appropriate amendment to the record. Well, you will. You keep the record. You take minutes. Thank you. Absolutely. Colleagues, I also have been alerted that some residents did pull some additional items, and I'm going to thank the city attorney's office. Mr. Manager, and if you'll amend your list, item number 7, but the person who pulled item number 7 appears to not be in queue, Charlie Wilson. So we'll add to the list item number 7, item 9, 13, and 21 to the pulled list, and we'll go in numerical order. Number 7, Madam Clerk, is Charlie Wilson, and I don't believe Charlie is on. Do you see that name in the queue?
No, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I do not see Charlie Wilson in the queue.
Okay, then we'll move on then to
Mayor
item
Pro Tem,
number 9.
was he a resource person or not? That was a. I guess you're right.
Sorry?
I was wondering if that was if he was serving as a resource person or.
No, this is per information from the attorney.
Okay.
That it was a pulled item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem, no, I just saw that person as a participant with the item listed. So it could have been a resource person. I don't know that.
Okay,
it's not the staff person listed on the agenda.
Okay, so you're looking at the actual list.
I'm just looking at the participants,
I appreciate
making sure
it.
we don't miss anything.
Okay, yeah, and I'm toggling between 3 and 4 screens, so please don't be shy about jumping in. He may very well have been, Councilmember, to your question. I'm not certain, but Mr. Derek Derek Rhodes, item number 9. Is there a Derek Rhodes? I believe I saw a Derek Rhodes in the queue. And Madam Clerk, if you'd help me search the queue, and if you see a Derek Rhodes, make them present.
I did make Mr. Rhodes present.
Yeah. Mr. Rhodes, good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. You wish to speak on item 9?
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. You have 3 minutes.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon, members of City Council. It's great to be with you all. My name is Derek Rhodes. I'm the founder and executive director of Durham Success Summit, located at 727 North Mangum Street in Durham. On item number 9, on the fourth quarter crime report, we continue to see high levels of violence impacting young Black men, including 11 who were shot last month. However, it's crucial that we recognize that violence is not occurring in a vacuum here. Approximately 40% of young Black men in Durham are not on track to secure employment by the age of 25. This lack of economic opportunity, compounded by the challenges many of these young men face, creates a pipeline to violence rather than a pipeline to career success. I urge this council to prioritize funding and support for programs that are directly working to bridge this gap by equipping young Black men with the skills and networks they need to succeed in high demand sectors like life science.
Did we lose Mr. Rhodes, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we did.
All right. And that's a presentation. I could have very well just had him wait until the presentation to make his comments. So if we get him back, we'll certainly afford him that opportunity. I'm going to move on in the interest of time, and we'll circle back when he gets back on to item number 12. Councilmember Rist, I believe you pulled that.
Yes, thank you so much. Is the resource person on? Is that Mr. Tracy?
So I'm available.
Oh, hey, Sean, how you
This
doing?
is Sean Egan, Director of Transportation.
Hey, so just a quick question. This looks great. I know these are roads that are slated for some multimodal improvements. They were part of the bond referendum, right? So it's good to see the bond referendum we're already using those funds. I just wonder if you give me an example of what kind of multimodal safety improvements they might suggest on these roads, and maybe an example of one of those roads.
Certainly.
So let me look like.
Walk through a couple of them.
Yeah.
So like University Drive, for example, near South Square. So in between the two ends of Old Chapel Hill Road. So That's a transit route. The GoDurham Route 10 operates on University Drive there. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is looking at the potential for reducing lanes to accommodate transit and or bike lanes along the corridor, as well as looking at potential safety improvements at intersections to reduce conflicts and assist with our Vision Zero goal to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries on our roadway network. Some of the other locations in the Crest Street neighborhood, on Elba Street near Duke University Hospital, on Gear Street near Washington Street, and Mangum, Lynn between Pleasant out in Southeast Durham, and then Martin Luther King Parkway between Shannon and Old Chapel Hill Road. So we're focused on 6 locations that are part of the city's resurfacing schedule using the bond funds.
And again, it could be safety improvements, could be sort of like road diets. Yeah.
Transit lanes, bike lanes. We're looking for any opportunity to build out and strengthen our multimodal transportation network.
Great. That sounds really exciting. Thanks so much. That's my question, Mayor Pro Tem.
Can I just ask, are these the items that are listed under Exhibit A? That's all the 6 items under Exhibit A?
Yeah, it's in there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else on that item? All right, Madam Clerk, do we have Mr. Rhodes back?
Yes, Mr. Rhodes is in the queue right now, and he had 2 minutes remaining.
Actually, I'm going to amend. I'm going to let him speak on item 13 now, and then when we get to the actual presentation, it's germane. His comments are germane. He actually wanted to speak on item 9, which is a presentation. So I'll have him speak during that time, per our regular order.
Okay.
So if you'll make him present now, we'll do 13.
Good.
Mr. Rhodes, can you hear me?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Mr. Rhodes, let me apologize to you. Your items are germane to item, your first remarks were germane to item number 9, which is a presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow you to make your comments relative to item number 9 when we get to that police presentation, which is part of our regular order. So I apologize for that multitasking here, but you did also pull item 13. So I'm going to ask if you would give your remarks relevant to item number 13. And then when we get to the presentation by our police department, I'll allow you to make your remarks relevant to that item at that point. Is that all right?
That's absolutely all right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Absolutely. So you'll have a fresh 13. You'll have a fresh 3 minutes on item number 13.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So regarding item 13, again, Durham Success Summit, we're located on Mangum Street, 727. Very excited about this project here and looking forward to its implementation, hopefully. At the February 17th Durham City Council meeting earlier this week, Councilmember Cook acknowledged that, quote, neighbors who are left without real options for housing in Durham. Approximately 40% of young Black men are not on track to secure meaningful employment by 25. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, by the time a person turns 25, their lifetime earnings can be predicted. This means that there are 3,280 young Black men who are counting on us at Mangum Street who are not just at risk of being unemployed or employed without a living wage, but also being housing insecure because of this. We do not have time here for humorous activity outside of real meaningful engagement. We encourage you to prioritize funding and support for programs like ours across this city that are directly working to bridge the gap, equipping young people with the skills and networks they need to succeed. If you care about any of these issues, if you care about this street and this block, we urge you to invest in youth-serving organizations as you continue to prioritize budget requests. Thank you. I'll yield the rest of my time.
Mr. Rhodes, thank you so much, and thank you for your understanding with our massaging of the agenda. Colleagues, we'll move on to item number 14. I heard both Councilmembers Freeman and Baker pull this item out. I'll yield to either one of you who wants to start first.
I'll hop on here. Thank you, Director Egan, for being here. You've got a lot of items on this agenda today. So I wanted to just make sure I understood what was going on here. So our bus vehicles are requiring more maintenance than we would ideally have, twice as much maintenance as we'd like. And then it looks like hybrid vehicles cost way more when it comes to maintenance than diesel and battery. Could you just explain, and do you know why? And could you explain why that would be?
Sure. So this is Sean Egan again, Director of Transportation. Uh, our experience with the hybrid system is that you're really taking care of two separate propulsion systems for a bus. So you have to take care of the diesel fueled system, and then you have to take care of an electric system. And so in our experience, the chances of something going wrong when you're trying to maintain two separate systems that rely on each other, those chances double when you're trying to operate both an electrical system for propulsion as well as a diesel system. And so I think in the passenger vehicle market, the hybrid technology, really advanced and developed. In the transit bus market, the general consensus in the industry has moved away from hybrids and choosing either diesel or one of the zero emissions technologies because of so much of the same type of experience that we've been having with a high incidence of the buses being down and unavailable for service, and then very high costs associated with replacement parts and maintenance to keep these vehicles on the road.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. And then it looks like the cost for maintenance for battery powered is the lowest. However, the cost of purchase of those vehicles is twice as expensive as new vehicles is twice as expensive as a diesel on its own. So obviously that's something we have to wrestle with. And so we're looking at purchasing used diesel vehicles at the moment because of quick turnaround time and just meeting demands and keeping up with everything. So just want to make sure that was my understanding is correct. And
that is correct. Yeah,
and
and I would just caveat the battery electric buses. The data that you're seeing is from new vehicles, basically. All of the vehicles have been purchased in the last 4 years. 75% of them were purchased just 2 years ago. So we typically see very low maintenance costs for new vehicles. And then as the vehicles age, the maintenance costs. So there's we don't have data going back, 10 plus years for the battery electric buses because we took delivery of our first 2 buses in 2021. So it's not clear, I think, that we'll be able to maintain such a low maintenance cost per mile over the life of those vehicles. So what you're seeing now is kind of a best case scenario because the equipment is nearly new.
Okay, so we're still trialing the battery powered buses, and we just kind of need to wait and see how long they are low maintenance vehicles, and as they age, that will inevitably go up, and we don't have that comparable yet.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So in the meantime, we are purchasing used diesel vehicles. Okay. And so currently we're just monitoring the costs of purchase, costs of maintenance to make decisions as we move forward. Is that?
Yeah, our focus
right?
is really on vehicle availability. So we're getting ready. We're doing public engagement right now for the next round of GoDurham service improvements. We're going to be adding frequency on the Route 3 corridor on Holloway Street in East Durham, serving the village out to Southern High School, new crosstown connection between the village and North Carolina Central University and Durham Tech. In order for us we have the dollars lined up. In order for us to be able to implement that service expansion, we need more vehicles because we're at the limits of what our fleet can do right now. So this enables us to increase our fleet size and have vehicles available for all of our service needs and to support that service expansion that we hope to be bringing forward by the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, very useful. Thank you so much. That's it for me.
And
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman.
those are actually in line with my questions, and specifically it was like if there was a supplier issue, and I get it. I think you also.
Thank you. Okay, I thought you had frozen. Sorry, Councilmember Freeman. All right, colleagues, and just for clarification, thank you, Mr. Manager, for clarifying. Councilmember Riss, item number 7, Charlie Wilson was indeed a resource. Charlie, last name Wilson, was indeed a resource. So we'll move on to item number 15. Councilmember Freeman, I believe that was you.
And I believe that Sean has answered my question. It was really around whether we're moving towards the bus rapid transit, and he's stated those lines that he's actually looking to increase with the used vehicles that will be on lines.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, colleagues. Colleagues, like item 21, which I indicated was pulled, like item 9, item 21 is a presentation as well. So I will have our speaker who pulled it from the community reserve comments until we get to the actual relevant agenda item. By my record, we've exhausted our pulled items. I trust my colleagues have had opportunity to exhaust all their questions and concerns and have fully treated them to your satisfaction. With that, we're going to move to our presentations, and I'm going to start with ask our police department to prepare for item number 9, the 2024 fourth quarter crime report. But before we hear from our police department, we do have a community member, Mr. Rhodes. And at this time, Madam Clerk, if you'll make him present and give him 3 minutes for his comments relative to item number 9.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, and thank you, Council, again for hearing our comments related to item number 9 now. The epidemic facing young Black men, disproportionately affecting young Black men, is at an all-time high. We continue to see high levels of violence impacting them. However, it is critical that we recognize that violence is not occurring in a vacuum. The lack of economic opportunity, compounded by the challenges many of these young men face, create a pipeline to violence rather than a pipeline to career success. I appreciated in this report the referrals to employment agencies. However, I urge this council to investigate what are the outcomes associated with this support, and how is the police department partnering to ensure that young Black men before the age of 25 have economic and community support with wraparound services, working collaboratively to make our entire community a safer place. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will yield the remainder of my time for the presentation.
Mr. Rose, thank you so much. And may I take a point of personal privilege on behalf of the mayor and the city to thank you for the grassroots impactful work you do in our city with that population. I know I speak for Councilmember Caballero and the mayor and myself that we had a wonderful time at your event a couple of weeks ago, and we're pulling for great success for the important work you're doing. So thank you so much. All right, at this time, I will yield to our police department for the fourth quarter crime report. And thank you so much for being with us. We're gonna let you knock it out so you can get back to responding to all of our needs in this weather out there. So thank you and welcome to our DPD.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, Manager Ferguson, city staff, and also the community that are currently watching. This is I'm back, so you couldn't get rid of me forever, but I am back with your 2024 fourth quarter crime report. Before I start, I just want to just take a moment and thank all of you for spending a few hours of your time. We're all busy, I know that, but I also know that you all are busy as well. Actually coming and seeing what it is that our forensic services unit, what they do, and learning about the scientists that they are. And so, and also coming over and seeing our property and evidence unit. So that means a lot to staff, and I'm really appreciative of it. So Captain Packard is working behind the scenes to guide this ship. So hopefully he gets it right the first time. No pressure. Just kidding. All right. So next slide. So as you know, our report typically covers the department's the 5 performance measures: Part 1, violent crime; Part 1, property crime; our clearance rates, our response times to priority 1 calls that occur, as well as our staffing levels here in the Durham Police Department. So this slide reflects our Part 1 violent crime from January 1st to December 31st. What you'll note is that overall, we are down in violent crime. And as you know, as I've said time and time again, the data does not reflect what's in the heart and on many of our minds as it relates to violent crime. So I want to first say that. We were down in 4 categories. We were down in 3 categories, but slightly up in rape in the 4th category. So I want to note that, so for forcible rapes, we were up 6.4% in forcible rapes. 22 of those actually occurred and were reported having occurred in previous years. 14% of those were domestic in nature. So we have a known suspect in that. And 12 of the 45 clearances that we had, about 27% of those were reported in prior years. So our robberies, we did have, and we're down slightly, but I do want to just take a moment to talk about our robberies. Obviously, we have seen a reduction in both our individual robberies, our robberies from people, as well as our commercial robberies. We've seen slight reductions in that, but kind of the middle to the last part of the year, we started to see several trends in pockets of robberies where there was a disproportionate amount of Hispanic or Latino, Latinx victims, and they were affected in a high amount. I am extremely proud of my staff for being able to investigate each one of those robberies that we had. Some of those were also ended in aggravated assaults, and were able to make several significant arrests in each one of those cases. Our aggravated assaults, although down, we did note that 63% of those aggravated assaults involved firearms. So that was about 149 gunshot wounds. And that rate, so we did a comparison of what does our rate look like. So our rate is 63%. The rate for North Carolina agencies during the year was 56% in 2023, and that's kind of how that compares out. Next slide, please. So this just gives you a visual snapshot of what violent crimes look like, and we like to do on 10-year, so 2015 to 2024, and we like to show you how those numbers look year over year over year. And so what I do want to draw your attention to is, so homicides is reflected in the flat blue line there, and it's the lowest. We're at the lowest since we've been in 2020. Of the 39 homicides we had last year, 34 of those did involve a firearm. And if you'll look, our higher year was 2021, where we actually ended up with 49 homicides, but we've been kind of trending upwards for 2021, 2022, and 2023. Last year, we ended up with 39 homicides. Our robberies, so that is the green line that you see on your screen, that has trended downwards, and we are at a 10-year low for that particular category. Again, you heard me mention and talk about Hispanic victims that have been disproportionately impacted throughout the year, with 43% of those individual robberies in 2024, those had at least one or more victims. About 37% of those had one or more victims. So aggravated assaults is your purple line. That's when we talk about gunshots, non-fatal gunshot wounds. That's what we're really looking at, is the aggravated assaults. As you see, it was almost like a mountainous peak we had a significant peak that started 2019, really sharp increase 2020, and it appears that we're on somewhat of a downward trajectory, and that began to come down after 2020, and you see that we're almost leveling out to where we're coming down in 2024. Next slide, please. Thank you. So these are your shooting incidents. So this breaks down what we're just talking about with the aggravated assaults that involve gunshots, and gunshot wounds. So this is our shooting incidents, and it breaks down our person shot, and from that, how many were fatal, and then how many did we have that were non-fatal. And so this is what we have been seeing over each quarter, is that there have been less incidents. So if you look at the shooting incidents, we're down not quite 25%, but 24%. But we've seen an increase in the number of persons shot. So it's almost a 7% increase. And so what that tells us is that in any one of these shootings, we generally have more than one person shot. I think we're averaging just over 1.14 people shot during that time. There were 981 guns that we seized in 2024, so that's down about 12%. Those guns, though, however, did come from 695 of those incidents, of each one of those incidents. And we get that data, the gun seized data is based on what we are actually turning into property and evidence, and what property and evidence is able to log in as it relates to each individual incident. So we did have a question. I do want to touch on that last time. I believe it might have been from either the mayor or Councilmember Middleton. Oftentimes what we see is when we have a gunshot wound, especially one that's non-fatal, that victim will be driven to the hospital. And so the hospital has to report that gunshot wound. And so we looked at the shooting incidents from a period of 2023 to 2024. It increased over time from those that were actually visiting and going to the hospital. And it's very hard for us to individually track how many of those ended up in the hospital. But we think about 54 of those shootings were individuals that went to the hospital. We don't have the ability to really look at, without taking a deeper dive, was there an actual 911 call that resulted prior to them actually going to the hospital. So next slide. All right, so this is what our gunshot wounds, fatal and non-fatal, look week by week, so throughout the year. So we took this from calendar year 2019 through December 31st, 2024. And so your yellow line is 2024. What you'll notice is our highest was 2020. So if you think back to the aggravated assault line that I showed you, where that sharp increase and then you started to see a steady decrease, this actually further tells that story and demonstrates that what we talked about in previous slides. So 58% of the gunshot wounds occurred in the first half of the year, and 42% of our gunshot wounds occurred in the second half of the year. When we start to look at just individual demographics, we've heard anecdotally that there are a lot of our young Black men being shot. When we actually looked at the demographics of shooting victims, comparing those to shooting suspects. So in 2024, our shooting victims were 82% Black, 86% male, and 41% are under the age of 25 years old. 41%. Our shooting suspects, it aligns somewhat. 79% Black suspects, 85% male, and 38% were under the age of 25. And so we have not been able to identify all suspects from all of our shootings, but those that we've been able to identify, we have, of course, been able to charge them. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so we talk a lot about violent crime. It's also important to talk about property crime, because property crime, in a way, is what we talk about when you start hearing us, motor vehicle break-ins, motor vehicle thefts. Oftentimes, those firearms that are stolen out of vehicles, can pop up and be used in a shooting and being recovered from a shooting. Also, motor vehicles that are stolen, we often find are being used in other crimes, whether it's here or in other areas. So I do want to just bring your attention to the larcenies. So you see that our larcenies have increased 8%. So what's driving that? Well, our two main ones are our larcenies from motor vehicles. Those were up 11%. And from 2023, 34% of those larcenies, we had 34% of our overall larcenies were also related to shoplifting. So shopliftings, people just think that it's someone steals this or they steal that, and it's very small, but overall it represents a large amount of property that are being stolen from some of our major retails, and can really contribute to a larger overall ring of crime. Our motor vehicle thefts, as you have seen in years past, that really has driven us up in those numbers. However, we are starting to see a downward trend in the rate or in the number of motor vehicle thefts that we have. 20% of our vehicles that are stolen were left running unattended or had the keys left somewhere in the vehicle. So we always say, although it gets cold, it's very cold, and you're tempted to warm up that vehicle, please try not to do that. Also, taking your key fob and really putting your key fob in your home far enough away from your vehicle so that frequency cannot be cloned, and they cannot get access to your vehicle. Kias still continue to be high. Hyundais still continue to be number 2, and Hondas are falling into our number 3 category of most stolen vehicles. Next one, please. Okay, so similar to the violent crime graph that I showed you, this is your property crime reported by year, so 2015 to 2024. And so just of note, I want to talk about the larcenies, because that's your high, that really what we just talked about, your high line that's way up there with larcenies. And you'll see the trend. So it's been trending upward, right, over the last 2 years. And we are currently at a 10-year high. And again, that's mostly due to the shopliftings as well as the thefts from motor vehicles. So we have really tried to assist our uniformed patrol in some of the calls that they are responding to. We've tried to be innovative in really seeing if we have other ways in which we could document those crimes. And so 20% of those shoplifting calls have been in progress. 8% of those calls we've been able to route to our telephone response unit. And that has actually, that's been very helpful in being able to redirect our officers to respond to other higher priority calls. We have really been trying to promote our P2C, or police to community or police to citizen. We began that in March, and we've seen almost 16% of our larceny calls, so the non-in-progress calls being our community members have been making reports through the P2C platform, which ultimately has again translated to more availability of our officers. So motor vehicle thefts, again, that's our green line. As we've been talking about, there was that Kia Hyundai 2021, it almost was level, then it shot up 2022, 23, and we're starting to see it come down again in 2024. Big shout out to Kia and Hyundai for really doing their level best and trying to partner with us to mitigate those thefts. So next one, please. All right, so here is our guns. When we talk about the guns stolen, we look at what was the trajectory from 2019 to the end of 2024. And this is very self-explanatory. What we've talked about, it has just skyrocketed in 2024. You'll see 2023, it was coming up. But we really have seen an increase in the amount of guns being stolen. And so year over year increases, we're looking at about a 29% increase over 2023. 69% of the guns that were stolen from motor vehicles. We've had conversation about, are there legislative changes that we can make? Are there things that we could do to really dissuade our gun owners from not leaving their guns in their vehicles? And quite frankly, it potentially, if there's legislative changes, the unintended consequence of that would be that simply people stop reporting their guns stolen. And then that way we are not able to track these guns when crimes are committed, if they're not reported stolen. So next slide, please. All right, so this is one of my favorite slides because it does really show, I talk all the time about the great work that our uniform patrol staff are doing with really being present and doing great reports. And then it translates to even better investigations. Our investigators, they continue to really lead the charge in clearance rates, but not just clearance rates, clearing by actual arrests, as well as very solid cases that we present to our district attorney or to our federal partners. And so just want to show you in our homicide category, we consistently cleared over the FBI's clearance rate for 2023. In 2024, we cleared higher in all categories. So that is commendable because every last one of those crimes are not easy to prove and certainly aren't easy to identify a suspect. So I credit our patrol officers, our investigators, but also you all visited the lab, our forensic staff. So outstanding work, and I'll shut up about that and move on. So let's go to property crimes. Property crimes are as equally as as difficult to prove the whodunit. We really do rely heavily on our forensic evidence as well as the networking with our intelligence teams. Because we do talk to Raleigh and other agencies. And so what we see here is we actually, overall, we did clear lower in some categories. However, we still did well, particularly in the burglary category where we cleared higher than the national average. I don't take too much heartburn with our clearance rate in the property crime, only because I know how very hard it is to actually bring someone to justice, identify someone and bring them to justice for these crimes. So just so that I want to remind you the FBI clearance rates for 2023 are based on cities with populations of like size, so 250,000 to 500,000 people. So we are comparable to other cities our size. I also do want to just tell you that 90% of the violent crime cases were cleared by arrest. 90%. 95% of our property crimes were also cleared by arrest. Someone was held responsible and actually went to jail for those cases. Next, please. So priority one calls for service. So we saw that we were Our priority one calls for service, we were at 8,998 priority one calls for service in 2024. That is actually down 1% from 2023. Not really sure what causes that. Certainly, I think if it was a higher number, we'd probably have to look at, where were we down, exactly what calls for service were we down in, and what was driving that. But that's not necessarily anything I would take heartburn with. However, I will tell you, as I've said to you before, that we our average response times were starting to kind of tick up. And so our average response time in 2024 was a flat 7 minutes. And this was response to priority one calls for service. So think code 3 runs that officers need to get to very, very quickly. This obviously did not meet our target of 5 minutes and 48 seconds. 45% of those calls were answered in less than 5 minutes, which still didn't meet our target of 57%. And so our data previously indicates that our response times are obviously being negatively impacted when our staffing falls below 80%. The city of Durham is also growing as we start to, have new developments and also bring in and expand the city's boundaries. That doesn't change the amount of officers that we have out on the street and on uniform patrol and that are working. The number doesn't change, right? As the boundaries change. What we have been doing is we did go back, Mr. Sheese and I did go back and actually look at our response time. We did make a small change that actually we think ended up being a very large change, a significant change to the calls that our staff could actually see that were holding. Our officers could not see holding calls and self-dispatch themselves to certain holding calls. None of them were priority one calls for service, but certainly I think it kept them from being able to respond to certain calls quicker and may have had an effect on the priority one calls for service if we had some that might have been held because there were no officers available. So we have since remedied that, and we're going to see how that has an impact on our response time. So next, please. So this is what it looks like, just so that you can see our response time measured by year. So obviously, when in 27 and 2018, you see that our response time, while it was still above where we should have been, we actually were responding much faster. You'll start to see an increased response time as 2020 came about, and then because that was COVID, right? So everybody was kind of locked into one place, and so that was the COVID effect. After that, though, you now see the increase in response time as more people are up and about and moving about. So supplemental patrol staffing, our normal patrol staffing range from 46% to 51% per month in 2024. We add paid supplemental, so we use our lapsed salaries to pay for extra officers in order to be able to absorb that loss that we're feeling. And that's been able to increase our staffing throughout the day from anywhere from 62% to 68%. Again, we've diverted a lot of the lower priority calls by using P2C. We have part-time officers that are also able to come in and take calls over our telephone response unit. I also want to shout out the work that HART is doing. They help to divert some of those calls away that we would be responding to. So they've done a great job with that. And then hopefully, when we roll out our civilian traffic investigators in spring of 2025, who will be responding to traffic crashes, non-injury traffic crashes, we're certainly hoping to be able to see a little bit more of a reduction in our actual response time, because we have officers that are able to respond to those and not hold or delay any of those calls. Next, please. So I'm very excited. We always talk about staffing, and we've made a commitment to keep you all posted about where we are. We just graduated, or we will be graduating Academy number 60. They'll graduate formally March the 14th. They are currently in the after academy right now. We'll graduate with 9. But I will tell you that Academy 61 that just started on Monday, we started with 23 in the class. And so we are very, very excited. Our staffing numbers are holding steady. We have not lost any more officers going to other agencies. So we're starting to see the effects of the pay increase, but also some things that we've been able to do here within the police department. I won't say that it feels better. That's not up to me. I think the officers will tell you if you ask them truly how they're feeling. I would like to think that we've done some great work here, and that we're going to continue that. And so we've been able to retain. We're getting more applications in. We are processing more background checks quicker. And that has also helped us onboard folks a lot faster. We've had officers that have come back from other agencies that have been paying at a much higher rate. And they come back and they say, just basically the grass wasn't as green as they thought it was going to be. And they came on back. So we are happy to welcome them back. Next. All right, so our 30 by 30 initiative, we've done some great work around, the commitment that we made. You all, council, you approved our 2024 30 by 30 micro grant through the COPS office, and that was to the tune of about $175,000. And so that will continue with the development of our commitment, bringing in more women into law enforcement, increasing women in law enforcement to 30% by the year 2030. This current class that we have 26% of that class are women. And so we are very excited about the work that all of our recruiting team has done, not only in just the development, but also being able to bring in the best and the brightest. And so with that, I think we have one final slide that is a new addition. This helps us track the trend of it shows you how many did we start with in basic law enforcement training and how many did we end with. And so I think that's always interesting to see, because as we know, we might start with however many, we will lose some. There are some folks that just realize it's not for them, and that's okay. And so this current Academy 60 you'll see is listed on here. We started with 60. We will finish with 9. We do track why they leave or why they are removed from the program, from the training program. Most of the time, what we see is that they are topic deficient. They are not showing improvement, and the state has strict requirements around that. And we want to make sure that we are bringing in the best into our agency. And so it's going to be interesting to see what this newest class that we have coming in, what that looks like for them. We will lose some, but I hope that we don't lose a lot. So we're going to be helping them hang in there as much as we possibly can. So this is just a new slide that I wanted to throw in there, so you can just see, how we start, how many we start with, and how many we actually lose throughout the process. And that is it. Please follow us on all of our social media. And thank you for your time today. And I will turn it back over to you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, for any questions.
Chief, thank you so much for a great report. Always good to see you. Colleagues, I'm going to yield now to you for questions or comments. Councilmember Baker, I think you threw your hand up first, and then we can just go right on down the line.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Chief. I think you're doing a wonderful job. Have had the privilege of coming into headquarters a couple times recently, and appreciate you welcoming me warmly into headquarters and answering questions that I've had. Just wanted to ask one question. If there's anything that you can share about trends related to firearms and their movement and where they're coming from. If you have that information and it's something that you can share, I would be interested in it.
Of course, so we can provide you that information. We don't generally track them unless there is a criminal investigation that's ongoing. However, I can provide you with some high-level information around our NIBIN and around just overall behavior of firearms. What I can tell you is that what we do know is that a single firearm will be used multiple times in several different incidents. And so, they travel, they're being kept, instead of what we've seen before is that oftentimes folks will get rid of that firearm after an incident. What we're seeing is that they are actually holding on to them, because when we start the criminal investigation and we recover casings, we can actually see where that same firearm has been also fired in an incident in Raleigh or Greensboro or other places. So we do know that they are taken other places to be used.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I'll follow up on that. And I appreciate you answering that. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero, I think you had thrown your hand up.
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chief. Thank you so much for all of the information in the presentation. Really quickly, when you were breaking down the percentages of both suspects and victims of shootings, you shared the percentages around age under 25. Have you all done any analysis on is the age? I mean, we've talked how it's getting younger, but I would love to see over, just like we have that 10-year slide around what's that arc? It would be great to see, what does that look like when we're talking about both suspects and victims under 25? So if you have that information, would love to see it. And I think Mayor Williams talked a lot during a State of the City and in other places around. We know who was both perpetrating and the victim of many of our shootings. And today we had several or two public speakers, and it's a consistent theme. How do we meet that challenge? And especially for our folks under 18, right? I think that they're kids, one, and two, they are in our schools and in other places. And so that collaboration between the city, schools, and county becomes even more critical. And so knowing what the data is on that would be helpful. And then I think the other thing, the response times. When was the last time? I mean, the entire time I've been on council, I think it's been the same amount, and we never have met it, right? Like even when we had higher staffing and quote this, the city was smaller or whatever, population was lower, I don't think we've ever consistently met that. And so when do we need to have a conversation of that? Is that the metric? Is it not the metric? And would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yes, so I agree. I will have to do some research and find out if that's a standard. Manager Ferguson may have. I see his hand up. Oh, he says no. I will do some investigating into that and get some further information. But I agree with you that where does that number come from? If it's just a number, then certainly I think this is an opportunity for us to do some work around deciding whether or not that's actually an attainable number.
And I would love to see it in comparison. Oh, sorry about that. I would love to see that in comparison to other cities our size, right? Where's their target? Because again, we have. I don't want us to be not hitting a target again, just because it's a random number or it's not comparable to something that's actually like contextually relevant to us. So, and then finally with the gun, the guns getting stolen out of cars, you know, we've got Smokey the Bear. We've got, like, I hear what you're saying about, well, maybe we don't have Smokey the Bear anymore, but some of this I think is also education, right? So is there a way, I remember not this year because it got canceled, but last year, Hillside, their civics students had a kind of expo and invited a lot of elected leaders and other community members to come and hear like public policy ideas by youth. And there were two main themes. One was gun violence and one was kind of sustainability, environmental issues. You could pretty much put most of the kids' projects in those two buckets. And one of the kids were like, what if we bought gun safes, right? What is a low cost public policy thing? Is there appetite for, is there a thought process where maybe we offer free gun safes for folks to put it in their car? Yeah, you can still take the gun, but it's harder, right? It makes it harder. It makes it a pain. Just like people get dogs or other things to keep people out of their houses, it becomes a barrier, and so then it's just not as easy. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Mr. Manager, did you want to interject something? You're muted, Mr. Manager.
Only after other council members' comments are complete. So I will you receive comments from your colleagues. I was just going to offer some closing comments at the end. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Councilmember Cook and then Councilmember Riss, I saw your hand as well. Councilmember Cook, I'll yield to you.
I will be very brief because actually Councilmember Caballero hit two of my exact questions. But I'm just generally curious about the goal that we've set, but also why we measure not against the goal that we've set. So we measure in response under 5 minutes, but that's not actually the goal that we set. So I'm just curious if we also have numbers for and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like 5 minutes and some number of seconds.
5:30.
Okay, yeah, and if we have statistics for what percentage of our calls are under that as opposed to under the 5 minutes, or why we have the distinction.
Yes. So we'll get you we'll get you just an in-depth, some information around that, because I don't know where that number came from, but I know that as we measure it, when we look at how many priority calls that we have, we're not even hitting that by 50%. And that was the goal, but I can get you the actual, what does that look like, right? And is that a number that's an industry standard or it's comparable to sister cities?
Cool. And actually the other thing that I had highlighted to say was exactly what Councilmember Caballero just said, which is that we're seeing this number of guns stolen increasing. That's a huge amount. And also that we are averaging, it looks like, higher in terms of gun usage and things like aggravated assault than some of our peers. And so just I'm also not interested really in doing any penalty around locking guns, because the other piece of that is that we know that that incarceration or like other potential like criminalizing, there we go, criminalizing of certain things that does impact specific communities in a greater way than other communities. And so I think generally speaking, like that is not the answer. And you also talked about another thing, that it deters reporting. But I do know that there are creative solutions that are being brought in other places, and I would love to see us looking into those more. So looking forward to maybe putting my head together with Councilmember Caballero and some other folks, and maybe you as well, if we can think about some other methods for keeping those firearms safe. So thank you for that presentation, and thanks for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rist.
Thanks, Member Pro Tem, and thanks my colleagues for the really good questions, and thanks Chief Andrews for the very thorough and always thoughtful presentation. Really appreciate that. I do appreciate what you said about tracing guns by using the sort of like it's the stuff we saw in your forensics lab. Amazing work they're doing to sort of trace the imprint of the casing. So great work on the part of your staff. I'm excited to see the sort of modest drop in the violent crimes. It's always good to see that. And also the drop in homicides last year, which is good to see. I know that in the second quarter last year, there was a big jump, and that was a concern for a lot of us. So it's good to see that number certainly below the last couple of years. I guess I just had a question. Do you know offhand how many homicides have occurred this year in 2025? I looked at the weekly crime stats, and it was hard to get sort of like I had to go through all the different districts. So do you know that offhand for this year?
So right now we're at 5. We have some investigations that are outstanding right now, and we at least 2 that are outstanding, where starts off as a death that is suspicious to us, and we often have to wait for the medical examiner if it's not quite clear. If it's not quite clear for us, so if there's a change in that number, we'll always update that.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Freeman, any questions or comments?
Yes, definitely. I wanted to make sure that I said thank you for the presentation as well. And I did want to appreciate a couple of officers, the same, the hometown hero, Senior Officer Parks, and the first place state champions from the SWAT competition. I just want to say congratulations to them all. And then I also just wanted to note from the report, I appreciate the Federal Street Corridor focus and the specific attention that you've given in a very sensitive way to the issues that are over in that area. And I just want to overly appreciate, I think the community has raised a lot of praise around the work that's been happening there and making sure that folks are feeling the presence in a way that's not negative. And so I did want to say that. And then I also wanted to just kind of touch on the number of rapes. I know the violent crime is down, but the number of rapes, the percentage seems to be up. And I just wanted to differentiate whether that's just delayed reporting or if it's like current. And I also noticed a slight increase in the clearance rates for rape as well. And so I didn't know if that's something new, something new that's happening, or if it is anything that we can be doing to support that work.
Oh, thank you. That's actually a great question. So yes, so the majority of our reported offenses, so 22% of those were actually reported from previous years. We were, and that makes it a little harder, obviously, because it's belated. We still want the reporting. The work that staff are doing around, with the Saki grant, they are continuing. Our cold case unit is continuing those investigations. Cameron Park, Investigator Park, who you referenced, she is a part of that team. The work that entire team is doing, they have worked very, very hard with really focusing on those belated cases as well, and really making sure that we are talking with other agencies, as well as looking to see if there's any CODIS hits that come back, and actually looking at the evidence again that we do have. So all of that has come forward, and they've done an outstanding job.
And so that Saki grant will continue, or is it going away?
So, well, actually, that the Saki grant will be discontinuing, but we have maintained the positions within that grant. Okay. We've maintained the work because it's been very, very important work.
Okay. Thank you. And I just wanted to make sure that I did state it's better to kind of make sure that folks understand that if you're reporting those rapes belatedly, it makes it harder to prosecute or to investigate. And so just making sure that those out there who have been the victim do come forward quicker than come forward sooner rather than later is what I want to say. Thank you.
Yes. And I do want to say, our victims advocates here are tremendous. And so, we want to make sure that when we do have sexual assaults that are reported, our victims advocates waste no time in really uplifting them and supporting all of our victims through that very difficult process. So I think that also has helped too. with getting as much information as we possibly can and making those connections. So thank you.
And then lastly, I'll just say I'm looking forward to having those traffic investigators online. And so please keep me posted on when that will get started.
We will. We will. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Mr. Manager, your hand went back up.
I'll go ahead and take care of my comments now. I didn't want to get in front of other council members. This was just to, I wanted to call back to the chief's presentation. She mentioned briefly some of our success in recruiting. I know that the thing that most of the community pays attention to and that the council pays attention to is the increased salaries. And I think that has certainly been an important factor. I did want to commend the chief and her staff. They had an aggressive internal effort to do process improvement to ensure, she mentioned briefly, clear that they accelerated a number of efforts on background checks. They also kind of looked at each part of the recruitment process to see where there might be roadblocks. So I just wanted to call out to council that in response or in partnership with the efforts you made to increase compensation, the department had a very aggressive effort to address their recruitment pipeline, and I'm glad to see these initial results with this first academy. But I wanted to praise the chief and her leadership in that effort. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Absolutely, thank you, council members. I see your hand. That commercial with Loki was just bananas.
Yeah,
that was brilliant. I don't know who came up with that, but you had me wanting to join. Councilmember Caballero, and then Councilmember Cook.
Thank you. This was just something that was, let me lower my hand, sorry. We know that funding, or at least my understanding is funding from the state around victim services has been cut over the years. And so since we were talking about the Saki grant and rape and sexual assault numbers, I think it would be helpful to know as council members that, you know, if we start to see detriment, like folks not reporting or things not being able to be followed up on because of that lack of funding. And I think that my guess is my understanding is it's federal dollars that act as pass-through dollars to the state. And so I think that the federal ecosystem may change drastically around that kind of service and dollars. And so we don't want that to impact the local ecosystem. And so it'll be really critical for us as council members to hear and see what trends are happening and what y'all are seeing so that we can pull the local resources as necessary to close that gap. That's all. Again, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Cook.
Just one quick follow-up, Chief Andrews, and you said that the 42% of the rapes that were reported from previous years, can you tell us on average the number of years prior, or what is like the range we're seeing?
You know, I don't know that the 22%, but I can get you that. That's an easy, I can get you that info. We can have that for you.
Okay. I'm just curious if most of them are like the year prior, or if we're seeing like ones spanning long periods of time.
We have seen some that have gone back, you know, as far as, you know, when someone is they're reporting as an adult, but their assault occurred when they were a child.
That's what I was wondering about.
So we have seen it as far back as that. But I can get you just a range of what we're seeing.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, colleagues.
And it's important to note that even if it was reported as an adult and they were a child, it is investigated. I think people will think that you won't, but it's clearly important to say, like, we do investigate every reported case.
Thank you, colleagues, for your excellent comments and questions. Chief, very quickly, just to put a button on it. First off, the mayor wanted me to extend regards to you and thanks to all of the men and women under your command for the incredible job you would continue to do here in Durham. I did want to associate myself with my colleagues' comments on all of their commendations and appreciate the recent tours we've done, particularly with our property and evidence department and our forensics division as well. I want to make a couple of comments with respect to some of the things that were raised here and moving forward as well. Firstly, very heartened that there's been kind of a plateauing of blood loss, if you will, or bleeding off. And I'm glad to hear about our officers who are returning. realizing that the grass wasn't necessarily greener. We knew that when we did the pay raise, it wasn't going to be instantaneous or overnight, that we needed some lead time to see the effects of it. And I think those effects are starting to show. So very happy about that. I'm really excited about the interest and fascination with our leveraging of technology. The NIBIN system, the laser, which we need to get a new laser, the laser 3D recreation of rooms and that technological continuum. One of the reasons why the mayor and I have, and I did not put ShotSpotter in my budget this year and the mayor removed it from his, but one of the reasons why we've been advocates of it is because we've seen that continuum of technology. And we talked about being impressed with NIBIN and being able to match bullets. One of our highest profile arrests in this city was because of bullets we picked up from responding to a ShotSpotter call. That's where we got the bullet. It made the connection. So in terms of it bolstering our investigatory, I think a disservice was done in much of the debate saying it was a tool meant to bring down crime. Not so by itself. It was meant also to bolster investigatory ability and response time. Speaking of response time, as we struggled with response time, the Duke report made it clear that response times to ShotSpotter calls were lower, much lower than our response times to citizen-generated 911 calls. So that's a direct kind of impact on one of the metrics we use. One of the golden standards, actually, of response time. The sooner you get somewhere, the sooner you can help somebody, the sooner you can recover evidence. So if, let's be impressed with technology, but technology exists on a continuum and all of these pieces work together. I do also, I'm glad about the decriminalization or the push against decriminalizing when guns are stolen. But to put it in a larger context, though, it's fascinating. You can be held responsible if your dog gets out of the yard and bites somebody. You can be sued, or if your kids steal your gun and go take them to school. We're looking now at penalizing parents for kids taking guns out of their homes. As I said, dogs, property, there's all kinds of things we help people responsible for. We want to criminalize the gun industry. I think there's been a push towards that, like we did with big tobacco, kind of make them responsible for their products. And there's a big pushback, of course, because of the Second Amendment in our country against doing that. But I just don't want to know where the guns came from. And speaking of that, if we're going to decriminalize, we don't want to criminalize those who have had their guns stolen. But it's no mystery where a lot of the guns are coming from. We just said it. A lot of them are being stolen. And if we're going to trace the chain of custody or manufacturing of guns, then for goodness sake, let's not stop there. I just don't want to know where the gun came from. I want to know when the gun goes off as well. For me, it's just an intellectual exercise. If we're just tracking guns that are legal, there are more guns in America than people. This is a gun culture in our country. We know that owning guns is legal in our country. So I just don't want to know where they come from. I want to know when they go off as well. But I did want to point out that if you're impressed with being able to match bullets, that remember one of our most high profile arrests was because we got a bullet from a ShotSpotter response. And if you're concerned about response time, our response times were lower on those calls. And Duke demonstrated that for us in their report. So I do want to thank you for that visit. For us and for allowing us to touch things and to see things and see some of the stuff that the general public generally doesn't get to see. And our public should be very, very proud of the work that our police department does. I do want to say finally, also moving forward about the culture of the department. And Chief, we've been blessed, and you've continued that continuum of chiefs that have understood Durham values and have contoured policing to our values. A drop in citizen-generated complaints against our police, use of force incidents dropped with our police department. But there's been much concern raised about what's going on at the federal level. We know that the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department is under assault. This is the division that helped us get justice after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. The division that would have, fortunately not DPD, but other police departments around our country with consent decrees. So we don't know who's going to do that anymore. So it's now more so than ever incumbent upon us to make sure that those who protect us and walk with us govern themselves according to our values. And I say that to say how grateful I am to you for the culture you've continued to cultivate. And just because the federal government may be shutting down the watchdog of those that are vigilant against police abuses doesn't mean that that's going to happen here in Durham. Doesn't mean that our police department is going to go buck wild. They're going to continue to uphold the values that have been ingrained, and we continue to push in our culture. So I just wanted to encourage you in that and thank you. And I know it's going to be some interesting times navigating the waters ahead, but we're very grateful for the department that we have here in Durham. And on behalf of the mayor, regards to the men and women under your command, and thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you.
Good to
Thank
see
you
you,
very
and
much.
thank you for the report. Colleagues, thank you so much for your excellent questions and comments. I'm going to, in the interest of thematic content, I'm going to go ahead and just move on to item number 22, which is the police satisfaction survey results presentation by ETC Institute. We'll do that. And then maybe at the top of the hour, 3 or so, we'll take 5 minutes for a break and then come back for our Budget and Management Services Department second quarter financial report. So at this time, I'm going to yield for the ETC Institute presentation. And again, thank you, Chief.
Hey, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone again. My name is Jason Morado, the Director of Community Research at ETC Institute. And we just finished conducting the Durham Police Satisfaction Survey. So today I'm going to walk through the key findings from the survey. Let me pull up my screen here. Okay, hopefully we can see this okay. Just a little background about ETC Institute. I'm sure you remember this from recent presentations. But ETC Institute is a national leader in providing market research for local governments. We've been doing this type of work for over 40 years. And in the last 10 years alone, we've conducted surveys in more than 1,000 communities across the country. So this is really the type of work that we specialize in. And we do work all over the country, but we especially do a lot of work throughout the state of North Carolina, in particular, a lot in the Raleigh-Durham area. This is just an overview of what I'll go through today. I'll go over the purpose and methodology of the survey. I'll walk through the key findings, summarize our main takeaways, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. So there are several reasons to conduct a survey like this. One is to get an objective assessment of how satisfied residents are with police services and to determine what residents feel are the top priorities for the Durham Police Department and to measure trends from previous surveys. So this survey is 5 pages in length. This is the 7th police satisfaction survey that we've conducted for the city of Durham. The survey was administered by a combination of mail and online to randomly selected residents throughout the city. And that's our standard methodology for these types of statistically valid surveys. We received a total of 502 completed surveys. Our goal was to get to 500, so we accomplished that. And the results of the 502 surveys at the 95% level of confidence has a margin of error plus or minus 4.4%. So essentially that means that if we conducted this survey the same way 100 times, 95 times the results would be plus or minus 4.4% from what we're reporting. So the results are never perfect, even for a statistically valid survey, but the margin of error is small. So here we have a map of the city. The red dots are households that completed a survey. So we had a good distribution throughout the city. And as we were administering the survey, we made sure that the demographics of survey respondents reflect the actual population of the city. So you can see we had about a 50-50 split of male versus female respondents. This shows the race and ethnicity of survey respondents, and this matches up very closely with the actual population of Durham. And then this shows the household income of survey respondents. So I said there's a question.
Hey, Jason, just real quick, just on the survey response, I mean, 500 completed surveys is actually a good number, and I've done a little bit of survey research in my past. What's your response rate? How do you get that kind of response? And how long does it take you?
Yeah. So the typical response rate for one of these surveys is around 12 to 15%. So we mail surveys to about 7 times the number of households as completed surveys that we need. So since our goal was 500 surveys, we mailed a survey to about 3,500 households. And that mailed survey, in the packet, it included a return reply envelope for those who want to fill out the print survey and mail it back to us. There's also a link to the online version of the survey that was printed onto the survey. And then the envelope had a QR code for those who want to take the survey on their phone using that. So I think that helps us to get a better response rate, is to give people different options of how they can fill out the survey. They can mail it back, take it online using a link, or access the online survey through the QR code. And then if needed, we follow up with respondents. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you provide any sort of like modest, sort of like, gift card or any kind of modest payment, or is it, or not?
We do sometimes offer a 500, if respondents want, they can enter a drawing to win a $500 gift card. We don't do that on every survey, but we do that some of the time. I know we did it for your resident satisfaction survey. I don't remember if we did it for this one or anything though, but that's something we use at times. Seems to help the response rate a little bit.
Yeah, no, I know getting people to respond to surveys is difficult. So I'm impressed. It's getting 500 responses is I'm sure it's heavy lift. So appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you also asked how long it takes. It does typically take about a month or so. It varies depending on the length of the survey, but it does take a few weeks typically to reach our target number of completed surveys. So
thank you.
Sure. So here's what we learned from the survey. We found that overall the satisfaction ratings are similar to last year's survey in 2023. And overall, the satisfaction ratings are a little higher from the survey back in 2021. We found that most survey respondents respect, trust, and have confidence in Durham Police Department police officers. And the top overall priorities, police services, are efforts to prevent crime, visibility of police in neighborhoods, and how quickly police respond to emergencies. And these priorities are the same as we've seen in the last couple of surveys. So first, we'll look at satisfaction with police services. This was the first question on the survey, and here we asked respondents how satisfied they are with various categories of police services. You can see the dark blue are those who are very satisfied, light blue is satisfied, gray is neutral. So we interpret neutral as average or meeting expectations. It's a rating of a 3 on a 5-point scale, so it's not a bad rating. And then the pink and red are those who are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. So overall, the positive ratings far outweigh the negative. You can see the highest rated areas are the overall appearance and quality of police vehicles and equipment, professionalism of police officers, and the attitude and behavior of officers towards citizens in your neighborhood. Now, this chart shows the comparisons for this question for the last 3 surveys. So the dark blue are the results for this year's survey. The light blue are the results for 2023. And then the gray bar are the satisfaction ratings for the 2021 survey. So overall, satisfaction ratings have increased in 6 out of 11 areas since last survey, the survey in 2023. So overall, the level of satisfaction is similar to a year ago. But satisfaction ratings have increased in all 11 areas since 2021. If you look through a few of these, this third row down, there was a little bit of a decrease in the attitude and behavior of officers towards citizens in your neighborhood this year, but it's still much, much higher than it was in 2021. There's a big leap from 21 to 23. If you look at this 5th row down, how quickly police respond to emergencies, that's one of the top priorities for residents, and you can see the satisfaction has continued to increase each of the past couple of surveys. Satisfaction has also increased each of the past couple of surveys when it comes to ease of locating information on the police website. And if we go down 3rd row from the bottom, visibility of police in neighborhoods, that's also a high priority. The satisfaction ratings were about the same in 21 and 23 But this year, that's one of the areas that one of the bigger increases in satisfaction. And if you look at this bottom row, efforts to prevent crime, that's the lowest rated area. You can see it has improved each of the past couple of surveys. This year, the satisfaction is at 34%. 3 years ago, it was at 25%. So I mentioned that we found that most respondents respect, trust, and have confidence in police officers. Here we asked overall, how much respect do you have for Durham Police Department police officers? Again, the darkest blue are the results for this year's survey, light blue in 23, the gray in 21. You can see consistently about 2/3 of respondents say they have a great deal of respect for Durham police officers. And really, these numbers have been pretty consistent in all of these categories the past few surveys. We asked respondents overall, how much do you trust Durham Police Department police officers? We had a big jump from 21 to 23 in the percent who strongly trust Durham police officers. That went from 32 up to 41% from 21 to 23. And this year, the results are down 2%, but really very similar to the last survey. We saw a similar pattern with how much confidence respondents have in Durham police officers. There was a big increase from 21 to 23 in those who felt very confident. And this year, the results are similar to last year's survey. So we also took a look at, there were several questions related to race relations. Here we asked, in general, do you think Durham Police Department police officers stop people of certain racial or ethnic groups because they believe these groups are more likely than other groups to commit certain types of crimes? So you can see we had kind of a mix of responses. 28% said yes, they do feel police officers stop people of certain racial or ethnic groups because they're more likely to commit crimes. 32% said no. 40% said not sure. When we break these results out by race and ethnicity, 43% of Black respondents said yes, compared to 26% for Hispanic respondents and 17% for white respondents. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, how does that compare to other communities like Durham? I'm just kind of curious. That level of sort of, if you go back to the last slide, yeah.
This one here.
Yeah.
You know, we don't conduct nearly as many police surveys as we do resident satisfaction surveys, so we just don't have a lot of benchmarking data on this. This survey really is very customized for Durham, so yeah, I just don't have a lot of information from other communities on this question.
How has that changed over time in Durham?
Over time, these results are similar to what they were last time in 23. I have to go back to look at what it was in previous years. Well, I know at least going back to last year, this breakout was similar. In fact, I could probably look it up here.
You may not have it in front of you, but I'd be interested also in like demographic breakdown of these respondents. Would be interesting to see that.
Yeah. We can definitely look that up. We do have all that historical data.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I did just find it. So last time on Black respondents, 40% said yes. Hispanic respondents was 27%, and white was also 17%. So very, very similar this year to last year, the breakout by race and ethnicity.
I was curious about like age. Do you have age as well?
We can certainly get that. We just need to run a crosstab to break the results out by age. So yeah, that's certainly something we could do.
We'd love to see that.
Yeah, really for any of these questions, we can break the result out by any of the demographic questions like age. We already did it for race and ethnicity, household income, gender, and anything like that.
Great, thank you. I look forward to that.
Sure. So this chart shows how the results have changed overall for all respondents over the past couple of surveys. You can see from 21 to 23, there was a big decrease in those who said yes, they feel that police officers stop people of certain racial or ethnic groups. So that's a good thing. In 2021, 38% of respondents said yes, they think police officers stop people of certain racial or ethnic groups. That was down to 25% last year, and this year it's at 28%. So very similar this year to last year's survey. And as a follow-up, we asked, what is the reason for your view? 55% said media reports. That's the top influencer people's opinions. Then 40% said word of mouth, 40% said personal experience. Here we asked respondents, has there ever been a specific instance when you felt discriminated against by Durham Police Department police officers because of your race or ethnic background? You can see 11% said yes, 83% said no, just 6% said not sure. And then we also broke these results out by race and ethnicity. The results are pretty similar among Black and Hispanic respondents. 19% said yes for Black respondents, 17% Hispanic. Only 4% of white respondents said yes. And then we asked, do you think it's important for the makeup of the Durham Police Department to reflect the community in terms of race and ethnicity? You see 74% of respondents said yes, that is important, compared just to 15% who said no. Then we also broke this out by race and ethnicity. And again, the results are pretty similar among Black and Hispanic respondents. 83% of Black respondents said yes. It is important for the police department to reflect the community in terms of race and ethnicity. There's 80% yes for Hispanic respondents. For white respondents, it was 68%. So a little bit lower, but still a significant majority think this is important. And then we asked, do you think the Durham Police Department does currently reflect the community in terms of race and ethnicity? The majority of respondents say they don't know, it's 60%. But then for those who did have an opinion, 24% said yes, 16% said no. And the results were very similar among all different race and ethnicity groups. 23% Black respondents, 26% Hispanic, 27% white. So now we'll look at top priorities. We saw earlier how satisfied residents are with major categories of police services. As a follow-up question, we asked which of these services should receive the most emphasis from city leaders over the next 2 years. You can see by a pretty wide margin, the top 3 priorities are efforts to prevent crime, how quickly police respond to emergencies, and the visibility of police in neighborhoods. The 4th highest priority is efforts to cooperate with the public to address their concerns. And these were also the top 4 priorities in the last couple of surveys. And then when we broke this result out by race and ethnicity, efforts to prevent crime was the number 1 priority among Black, Hispanic, and white respondents. So this is the important satisfaction rating. You might remember this type of analysis from our resident satisfaction survey. This is based on 2 different types of data. First, we asked residents how satisfied they are with services. Then we asked which services should receive the most emphasis from city leaders, so which are the most important. And the idea behind this is that the services that have a combination of low satisfaction ratings, but at the same time are the most important, should be the top priorities to focus on. So the top 3 priorities are efforts to prevent crime, visibility of police in neighborhoods, how quickly police respond to emergencies. The next highest priorities were efforts to cooperate with the public to address their concerns, police safety education and outreach programs, and the visibility of police in commercial areas. So we've got a few other findings to look at. Here we asked respondents, what are your greatest areas of concern? And we gave respondents this list of different items. We asked them which 3 are their top priorities or which are the most top concerns. Top concern, gun violence, followed by murder and drug-related crime. But gun violence, by a pretty wide margin, was the top priority. We asked, do you think that Durham has enough police officers? Only 7% of respondents said yes, compared to 64% who said no. Then you can see 29% of respondents said they don't know. And then we asked how much respondents agree with different statements regarding the police department. So the dark blue means they strongly agree, light blue is agree, gray is kind of neutral in the middle. then the pink and red means they disagree or strongly disagree. So if you look at the top of this chart, you can see the majority of respondents do feel that the Durham Police Department is trying hard to maintain good relations with the community. So that's everything that I had. Just a quick recap. We saw that overall the satisfaction ratings are similar to the 2023 survey, and they are higher overall than the results of 2021. We saw that most survey respondents respect, trust, and have confidence in Durham Police Department police officers. And the top overall priorities are efforts to prevent crime, visibility of police in neighborhoods, and how quickly police respond to emergencies. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Jason, thank you so much, man. Good to see you again, and appreciate the report. Colleagues, you heard the report. I'll yield questions or comments or observations. Councilmember Riss, were you unmuting?
Yeah, no, but no questions now. I raised mine earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Caballero, did you?
No, just thank you so much for the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
All right, Jason, thank you so much. I heard you allude to that it's usually customer citizen surveys as opposed to these ones specifically focused on police. So I'm glad that Durham does this. You know, the most dramatic, impactful representation of government power is perhaps when police show up. All of the accoutrement, the lights, the badge, the gun. It's a very dramatic presentation of government power. So I think it's really important for us to know where our people are. I think this survey really kind of puts a firm exclamation point against anyone who wants to have a discussion of either or in our city. This false dichotomy, you know, folk who think we need heart, not police, or police and not heart. We clearly need both. And our residents clearly want both. They want a certain type of policing. And they want us to have the tools to respond to all types of issues, but not surprising that visibility, we talk about doing community policing in our neighborhoods and response time, getting there quicker. Really, I think I'm glad you asked the question, where did they get their view? And from the media, because there's a narrative about policing, kind of this national composite of policing. And then there's we're local people, what happens actually on the local level with our police department. So I am glad that you did ask questions. It's kind of akin to when I asked how many folk that responded about transportation actually ride the bus. You know, where did you get your view about transportation? So I'm glad you included that question. And thanks for the work. And hopefully we'll be able to integrate it into our future decision making. But I appreciate it. Councilman Caballero, is that your hand back up? Did you want to jump back in? Sure, please.
Thank you. Just really quickly, I wanted to say thank you. It wasn't really survey related, but I think part of the reason that we have the relationship we have is because of decisions made over many years of how we are going to do policing. I think we wouldn't see the positive, positive perception. And I think perception hasn't improved, which is what the survey carries out. And I think it's because we have made hard choices, nuanced choices that other communities haven't made. I think that was the right call. I think that it will always be a tension in that, who wants what. That's what it means to govern. And so I'm glad that we're seeing the fruits of our labor, essentially. We're seeing the fruits of our labor of decisions made. And you can see the improvement, and also just from the chief on down, there is a culture that is expected in our police department, and the decision makers around budgets and other things hold that high standard. And I am very grateful, but that standard still has to be held and still has to be championed. And so I think that's why we see what we see. Thank you.
Absolutely. Fully associate myself with your comments. Absolutely. These organizations don't change themselves. And it has been a long list of activists and folk who have caused this, which is precisely why I push back against when we want to pretend that the work did not happen, when we group our police or put our police under the heading of policing nationally, when we want to govern in ways that do not take into account the work that these activists did and the changes that have occurred. So thank you so much for that. Absolutely. These organizations are resistant to change often, and we've seen that. And I'm grateful for those who agitated in Durham and got us to where we are now. And amen to we need to remain vigilant and continue to make the call, which is why I said to the chief, in the absence of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, we need to continue to affirm our values and who we are here in Durham. Thank you so much, council member. Colleagues, anyone else? All right, Jason, thank you so much. Man, I appreciate you. Good to see you. Guess we'll see you next year. That is not
Absolutely.
a
Yep. See you next. Yep. Absolutely. See
That
you
is not a
next year.
commitment.
Yep.
That is not
Thanks,
a
everyone.
contractual commitment. Yeah, that's not a contractual commitment. That was the one I'm just saying. I guess I'll see you
Yeah.
next. We get coffee personally. I don't know.
Yeah.
Good to see
Well,
you, man.
yeah. Hopefully see you next year, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Colleagues, it's 3:14. We'll take a bio, coffee, tea break, let you focus your eyes on something else besides your screen. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back at 3:20. Thank you, staff. All right, colleagues, it's 3:20. I'll call us back to order. Hope you all enjoyed your very brief break. Thank you for your perseverance and for your engagement. We're going to move right along. Budget and Management Services Department. We'll go now to item 21, which is a report on our FY 2024-2025 second quarter financial report.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. It's Christina Reardon with Budget and Management Services. I'm trying to get my video to work, but let me share my screen. So hopefully you can all see my screen.
Got it.
Okay. And I am here today to present to you the second quarter financial report. Some of this will be a bit of a repeat Some of this will be a bit of a repeat from our budget retreat that we held last year, but I wanted to provide this second quarter report, which is getting us halfway through the fiscal year. This is a report that we bring to you 4 times a year, obviously with our friends in finance. So to start out the report, I will start out with our general fund. So looking at our general fund, which is the place where most of our departments sit, we expect this year for all of our departments to end the year in budget and for some of them to be under budget. These are a listing of some of our departments and where we think they're going to end the year at the fourth quarter. Most departments will be at budget. We have a few departments that have some personnel savings and some operating savings. Overall, we expect that we will do almost $8.4 million better than our budget. And that large amount of money that you see in our non-departmental line item is really the savings that we're realizing from our pay plan. So some of that is captured in our non-departmental. So breaking it out by expenditure types, if you look at our personnel services, this is the place where we expect to be the best as far as our variance to budget at $6.1 million. There is some operating savings that we expect to happen by the end of the year, which is about $1.9 million and a small amount of capital. So looking at expenditures, we project that we will be by the end of the fiscal year $8.3 million under where we had budgeted. Personnel costs, as I talked about, being under $6.2 million under, mostly due to our vacancy rate. And then operating costs at about $2 million, with capital being about $255,000 under. And we don't expect any budget to go, any of our departments in our general fund to go over budget. So moving on to revenues, we talked a little bit about revenues in our budget retreat last week. And as we talked about, the big news, which I talked about last week, is sales tax. We do not expect to make our sales tax projection this year and do expect to be under budget by about $2.6 million. Also, utility franchise is another revenue source that we have seen some decline in and expect to be under budget by about $650,000. Powell bill, which is our the money we receive from the state for road maintenance, is doing better than we budgeted, and we have received our second payment, so we are about $845,000 over budget, and other revenue line items coming in close to what we expect them to budget. So property tax, I think we talked about this at the budget retreat last week. All property tax needs to be paid by January 5th. We are over 90% of our property tax at this point has been collected, and so we expect to be to end the year at budget. Sales tax, as I've talked about, our collections through October 31st, you can see that we're under budget by where we were at this time last year, and we are expecting to come in under budget by about $2.6 million under budget. Our budget for the year was $104.9 million. Right now, and we've just received, even since we prepared this report, we now have our November sales tax. And there was a slight decline in that month's sales tax from the state too. So currently at the moment, we're about $900,000 behind where we were at this point in the fiscal year last year. So that is why we are projecting not to come in at budget. So running through some of the highlights of the general fund revenue, as we talked about, we expect the total budget to be about $2.6 million under where we had budgeted for the year. Sales tax is a large driver of that. And then utility franchise tax with other budget sources such as charges for services and occupancy tax, property tax coming in at budget, and then our power bill coming in over budget. We saw this chart last week at the budget retreat. As you'll notice, we are ahead in revenue from where we were at this time last year. Part of that's being driven is the property tax, which obviously we have a larger budget for property tax this year. So we would be from the perspective of amount of property tax, we should be receiving more property tax at this year. Percentage-wise, we're about the same.
Christina, I'm sorry, real quick, are you saying the Powell bill, that's the amount we're projecting being over budget, $845 million?
845,000.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, yes.
It should be a K instead of an M.
Oh, it says.
Yeah, I was like.
Thank you for catching that. No, we are not that. No, it should be thousands.
Okay,
not millions. Yes, we budget about 8 million. We're going to get we got about 9 million. So.
Got you. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. My apologies for that. That's.
Not at all.
And then the other revenue sources are doing well compared to last year. Many of them are slightly above. I will caution that and so I think that is we feel like these major revenue sources, as I talked about before, except for sales tax, are going to be close to budget, except for power bill as well. Okay. Moving on to enterprise funds. The first enterprise fund I wanted to talk about was water and sewer. We are currently projected to come in, revenues are currently projected to come in over budget by about $400,000. And personnel expenditures are also expected to come in over budget. But that is mostly due to a lower than expected vacancy rate, which is a good thing, but also means that they're running a little bit ahead of where they would be in what we had budgeted. And then operating expenditures are expected to come in about $1 million higher than what we had budgeted. The department has had some higher than expected electricity and costs, and also some chemical costs, some of it due to some weather events that they had. And so at the moment, there are expected to come in higher in expenditures than budget. Overall, that is a negative budget variance of $1.8 million. And so this kind of gives you a sense of this is just a slide showing the revenues and where we predict them to come at the end of the fiscal year. And then, as I talked about, this is the personnel and operating expenditures expected to come in over budget by the end of the fiscal year. Moving on to our transit fund. Personnel expenditures are expected to come in very slightly over budget. And operating expenses are expected to come in under budget, which is good news. And so this fund has a total positive budget variance of almost $1.3 million. As a reminder, this fund receives 3.75 cents on the tax rate. And, we will be hearing more from them at our next budget retreat next Friday. So this is a snapshot of the revenues and how we expect them to end the fiscal year. And then, of course, this is the expenditures with them coming in slightly over in personnel expenditures and under in some of the operating expenses. So moving on to our solid waste fund. This fund is experiencing, they are expecting that their revenues will come in under budget and their expenditures will come in over budget. So their operating revenues, I think that they have, in talking with the department, they have had some competition in some of their mixed solid waste fees. And so they are projecting that that revenue source will be under what they had budgeted for the year by about $2.6 million. And then also with personnel services, they are expecting to go over budget. That's partly due to the fact that this is a fund that doesn't really have a lot of vacancies, or if they do have vacancies, they have to be filled with overtime. And of course, we did a pay plan. And so they are expecting that to go over budget from where we have them at. Also, operating expenditures are projected, though, to come in under budget by about $2.5 million. And so that has to do with some of their contracts in mixed solid waste and recycling. So there's a positive budget variance of about $354,000. And this is kind of showing you those revenue sources and where we think they're going to end the year. And then I talked a little bit about their expenditures as well too. Okay. Moving on to stormwater. Our stormwater fund is going to be ending the year very close to where we budgeted them for. Operating revenues are projected to come in $10,000 over budget. And personnel services are projected to come in under budget by about $368,000. Their operating expenditures are projected to come in slightly over budget at about $34,000. And that leaves them with a positive budget variance of $347,000. So this fund is very close to where we had budgeted them. So you can see here the budget variance for operating revenues is pretty close to budget, slightly over at about 10,000. And then here you can see their expenditures. Okay. Moving on to parking, which is our last fund that we're going to talk about. The parking fund is projected to be $185,000 under budget with their revenues, and expenditures are also expected to be under budget at $171,000. As a reminder, there is some subsidies that this fund receives from our debt service fund to cover a portion of the existing debt. And then overall, it's projected to be $53,000, a negative budget variance, which is a small budget variance, but it is, as we have talked about in the past, a fund that has struggled. And we will be receiving a presentation from them also as well at our next budget retreat. So here is a look at the revenues. And what we talked about, they are expecting some of their operating revenues to come in slightly under the budget. And then there will be some savings in operating and slightly over in personnel. Just some of the other major funds that are in the exhibits that you received in your packet that we just wanted to give you kind of a high level overview of. Our ballpark and DPAC fund are doing very well and expected to kind of really meet budget for this year. So there's not much news there. Our inspection fund, which we talked a little bit about in the retreat last week, their revenues are expected to come in under budget by about $218,000, which would leave the fund with a negative budget variance. And so that is something that the department is looking at, and we will keep an eye on. And that is all I have for today. And so I'll take any questions that folks might have.
Christina, thank you for a very concise and on-point report. I appreciate you. Colleagues, you've heard the report. I'll yield now for questions or comments or observations.
I just want to say that this is probably not a good idea to have these meetings at home. My daughter is making cinnamon rolls, and I was a little distracted.
You bring it up for the whole class?
Sure did. Too bad you're not here. I can eat them for you. No, but I did want to say thank you, Christina. I appreciate the presentation. I think it's a continuation of the conversation we had at the budget retreat. And we'll just keep looking to see what the numbers will be.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rist.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thanks, Christina, for the presentation. And it's good to see the little more detail than I know we had limited time in the treats. It's good to see the full picture of Q2. I just had two questions. One was on the first couple of slides you talked about, there was some savings on the personnel side, but also some like operating savings. Can you explain that? Was like about $2 million in savings, right? Can you explain that in a little more detail? I wasn't quite sure I understood that.
Yeah, so there's a few operating savings, I think, which you were looking at the overall fund for the general fund. So it breaks down in between departments. I think the big place that we're seeing some operating savings is our Office of Economic and Workforce Development has some savings for some incentives that they probably will not be be realizing by the end of the year. And so that's some savings that we're seeing. And so that's probably the main place that we're seeing savings. And then there's some smaller savings throughout departments that
Okay, and I thought you said something about like also some savings with the pay plan or something about pay plan.
Oh, well, so a lot of the I guess what I said was you see where we are variance to budget. There's you'll see a $5 million variance in the non-departmental. So the way that we budget our pay plan, we did not departments. It did not get distributed throughout departments. We kind of put it in our non-departmental, and then we were kind of going to distribute it as departments need to use it. So we're seeing savings, and the savings are throughout the departments in vacancies. So that may be kind of a complicated way to describe it, but that's the way it'll show up in the financials.
I get it. So essentially vacancies was that big
it's
number.
Vacant. There's no vacancies in the non-departmental, but the vast majority of those savings in the non-departmental are vacancies. Because that's where we budgeted the pay plan. So the vacancies are in the departments themselves.
I think I understand that. But you said the vacancies are in the departments, but the number was in the non-departmental.
Yes, because we budgeted. So we budget the pay plan in the non-departmental, but obviously there is no personnel
staff there. Gotcha. Yeah,
but it's not there. So we are kind of then making everybody whole. In other words, in the departments.
Gotcha. And then my last question was on the water and sewer. There was a larger deficit there. How do you account for that then? Are there separate sort of surpluses in that fund that we can draw on, or does that come out of the overall budget?
Yeah, so the water and sewer is it's an enterprise fund, so it will contain its own fund balance. I know we talked a little bit about the general fund and its fund balance, but the water and sewer fund, if there is overages that they were not planning for, that would probably be the way it would be paid for this year.
So they have sufficient fund balance to cover that, is what you're saying?
They do.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Christina. The only question I had is around the parking fund. Glad to see that it's slowly performing better. I would just love to see anything that you have year over year, because I know a couple years it was struggling even more. And so would just love to see that. That's all.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else for Director Reardon? All right, Christina, thank you so much. Always good to hear the numbers. It's important, critical to what we do. So I appreciate it. And please thank your team as well for the hard work. I know it's a busy time for you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, then, colleagues, I think we've exhausted all of our presentations and published matters. We come now to the City Council budget request conversation, item number 24. I do want to note the absence of the mayor and Councilmember Cook. This is one of those conversations where, I believe very much in quorum and conducting business, but every once in a while those topics come along where you really want everybody there if you can have them. But we will note our colleagues' absence, and we'll do our due diligence to make sure that their views and concerns are looped in and reflected in subsequent conversations from today. I do want to make sure that we honor their input. So with that said, Mr. Manager, is there a staff member that was going to facilitate this, or are we just supposed to talk amongst ourselves?
We had not planned any formal processes, primarily a talk amongst yourselves. Obviously, the budget director is still with us, as am I, to provide any context you may be looking for. But primarily, we took the directive from council as just wanting a little more time than we had last Friday to ask each other questions. I'll take this opportunity to remind everybody that your ranking exercise is due by close of business tomorrow to make sure we get all your priorities back. And primarily, we are here as a resource for you today.
Sure. I appreciate that. Colleagues, you've got the ranking exercises in your possession. I certainly had some views that I think I expressed at our last meeting, and my only input today will probably be just some form of reiteration of that. But if any of you have any questions for each other, or want to opine a little bit on what we talked about at the last meeting, and any specific things about any of us anything that we may have proposed, I'm going to also recommend that we have another discussion. Well, clearly after the ranking, we're going to have to discuss the ranking. So a discussion after, if at least one other one, it probably will require more, but don't want to feel any anxiety that this is it today. So with that said, I'll yield to any of you. Councilmember Baker, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's a great list of items. I think Manager Ferguson said it well in our budget retreat that implementing all of these things would be good for Durham. So obviously the process of prioritizing is a tough one. For the most part, I feel pretty comfortable that I understand the requests. There are a couple that I'm going to reach specifically out to colleagues probably this afternoon, if not tomorrow morning. So I feel comfortable doing that. One of them is for the mayor, so obviously he's not here. So I'd like to chat with him. I did have one. There was one question that I had about an item that we have not placed in here among the other items, but which has been a regular item at least over the past couple years. And I'm not sure if we just forgot to put it on the list of requests, or if this is something that we just already built in. But eviction diversion, and my understanding is that there was going to be a change in process to an RFP process, but that was going to be that we were expecting to allocate that. So I wanted to throw that out there. If Manager Ferguson or any of my fellow council members had any other information about that, that would be appreciated.
There is going to be an RFP. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, I didn't mean to respond.
No, please go ahead. No, not at all.
There is an RFP process. I'm like the Mayor Pro Tem, I have a number of screens in front of me. I did get an update from the staff about when that would be moving forward, but so I don't waste your time as I hunt around today. Let me get that to you after we conclude this evening. But the staff is moving forward with an eviction diversion RFP. Was that the gist of your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was still in there because we hadn't included it. So I'll await your information. Just wanted to make sure that it was an amount that everyone was happy with and comfortable with.
My high level, and I might need to double check with DCM Chadwell and or the budget manager Christina Burden. My presumption would be that we're reissuing that RFP at the same funding level that is currently approved. I do not think staff on its own without direction from council would be changing the amount of funding with that. If DCM Chadwell or Director Royden know anything contrary to that, I'll ask them to come on and share that feedback.
If I may, Mr. Manager, Mr. Baker, I think the intent is to not go beneath current investments And of course, there have been very robust deliberations associated with additional deliberations beyond which we have been considered, all of which from a historical perspective would have had to come from the dedicated funding source, which would have meant programmatic adjustments and the like. In the space of that, and on top of advice from council that a competitive process was needed, we're not going to put forth a definitive amount at this time, with the expectation that a competitive process may yield a process for managing this circumstance as we have traditionally understood it, and perhaps some alternatives. We want to be faithful to the process that would yield what the pricing might be around that and make some decisions at that time. But I don't anticipate an investment beneath what we've historically done. I hope that didn't confuse, but we're trying to have some manner of fidelity that of circumstances associated with the metrics of success, how that's defined, the approaches to get there, without being presumptuous about which way is correct or wrong, would drive the process. And so we'll proceed starting with an essential investment that where we are now, and see what the competitive process yields in terms of an approach.
And can you say what that amount is? I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah, I had questions around it too.
It's approximately, my recollection, and don't cash this one at the bank just yet, but my recollection is that somewhere around $600,000 to $650,000.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Please.
So just really quick, I had planned on putting this forward in a budget request, but then I'd heard that it was an RFP process this year, and so wasn't sure how to proceed based on that information. The current funding, and it's because there has been additional federal dollars, is for $1 million. The base budget in our city budget is $650,000. I'd raised this with Manager Ferguson, and he'd said if we want an additional, even if it's an RFP process, an additional amount, we need to share that amount. I would also like to add that I understand that it's an RFP process, that's fine, but I would like a component of that RFP to include legal services. And so that is and I'm just saying that here, and this is one of the things I'm glad we're having this conversation, because this is an odd item. The process is changing. How we do it next year may look different, but I just wanted to name that, at least for this council member, I don't want to put forward a RFP that doesn't, the recourse in court has been one component. Like, there's many ways to do this, but I don't want us to strip our ability to have that in the RFP. So I just wanted to name that. And then I had a couple of questions about the conversation today, but I want to let my colleagues speak around what I just shared.
I want to
Thank you.
echo Councilmember Cunningham's comments as well, and just know that the legal services side of it is what keeps people in their homes. And so I do want to make sure that if that amount could be increased, what that number is closer to $1 million rather than 650.
Thank you, colleagues. Yeah, if I recall, part of the discussion around this was we keeping fidelity to eviction diversion writ large, whatever that looks like. In other words, if there was an on-ramp for us to stem eviction even before it got to court, are there players out there, are there entities out there that have had success in doing eviction diversion, whatever it looks like, before you actually get to the legal point? And is that a good place? Part of the concern, and I know the mayor had expressed this as well, was that a lot of these folk who have received funds for eviction diversion, we don't know what happens 3 or 6 months later. We don't know if they ultimately still wound up getting evicted, if next year they were in the same state. And we wanted to know, to make sure that we were truly helping folk, what the outcome was of their legal action, as opposed to if they never got to court in the first place and they're still in their homes. We know. I fully agree that I think the statistics and studies show that you have a better chance of being successful if you have an attorney with you when you go to court for these matters. So I definitely think our commitment to that should be in place. But if there's a better place to spend money for better results earlier in the process, I think that was the one of the animating factors behind this. We are not wed to any particular organization. We are wed to the concept of eviction diversion, whichever is most successful, which iteration of it. And hitherto, we have not really searched the universe to see what other players are out there that may be having success. The RFP may very well wind up ultimately. We may decide that a law firm that responded or legal services or legal aid responded, and alas, they are the best results. But we haven't really done a lot of due diligence, I think, in looking to see what else is out in the universe. That's just how I remember. And I know the mayor had expressed some concerns as well, and I have as well, about what's happening to these people 3 months afterwards, 6 months afterwards, within a year afterwards. Councilmember Caballero, I see your hand. I think I see your, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share, I think part of it, and this is why I think, I'm just sharing that within the RFP process, to your point, being able to track certain things would be included in the RFP. I think I do want to name that one of the issues, which is a process question, because, and this is something that to access DSS funds to help pay your rent, you literally have to go to court. And that has nothing to do with legal aid. That is a practice that has been there. That is a practice that has been named as a huge barrier, to your point. Once folks get into court, it's in a much different place. When legal aid is brought in on mediation type things, when they kind of get on the front end of a thing, there are way better outcomes. I think, yes, we need to track that better. We need to be able to have any nonprofit that's receiving dollars to be able to share those kinds of stories of outcomes. I think that that's important when you're getting public dollars, and I don't want to argue that point, but I do want to acknowledge that there are process pieces that the city doesn't hold, because we do not run DSS, that have created barriers for legal aid to represent folks and for residents to actually even access rental assistance, essentially. And so I just want to name that, since this is a public meeting. I know that DSS is working with legal aid to remedy some of that. I don't have an update, because that was something that was brought, I want to say, at a joint city county meeting a few months ago, as one of the barriers to what, when somebody has an emergency and they need funds. We don't necessarily want them to end up in eviction court. So what are the things that we are creating that creates a barrier for them or creates a bad outcome for them? And then I do, again, want to share, I think when we're doing eviction diversion, there's going to be multiple tools, and I just don't want us to shut the door on legal services as one of those tools. That's all.
I agree with you fully, Councilmember. And I think that's you raise an excellent point. I think the very fact that we're issuing RFP, by definition, meaning that we are looking for something that possibly may not be part of the DSS nexus. It might, or it might not. And we know that in order to access DSS, it's court. But this RFP is allowing us to see if there's a step even before that. That's not to say it's antagonistic to the partnering with the county, but I'm curious to see if there's some on-ramps, as I said already before, even getting to the court a la DSS doorway. But your point is excellent. It's well made. In any way we can, minimize what people have to go through, the hoops they have to go through, and the hurdles they have to jump. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm on your side on that.
I just want to add for this is because this RFP has not been released as far as or maybe not finalized. I just wanted to add my 2 cents as a council member in the construction of this RFP. I hear that there are folks who can do a variety of things, and maybe we have to look at, okay, it's a package of money, but I'm sharing my opinion that one of those responses has to be legal coverage, because now is that, again, it's like anything, it's just like housing anyway, right? Some people need permanent supportive housing. Some people need rapid rehousing. Some people need this or that in the housing world. And so I think that has to be our approach to eviction diversion. And since community development is going to be doing an RFP, that is what I would like reflected in the RFP. That's all. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Well, just if it's an important response, the drafting is not quite finished yet. And so I'm receiving this as constructive input until we get to the point of finalizing that document, and we'll certainly share that with the staff.
Thank you, DCM Chadwell. That's what I was hoping. I figured y'all weren't completely done, and so it would be important to get some of that guidance today. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to associate myself with Councilmember Caballero's point. I would think that if we're asking first off, this could be there's nothing that says that we can't have that RFP go out, contract with someone, and still give money to legal services. I don't know if it's a splitting of the funds or an increasing of the pot. I know that if you're a not-for-profit that's not a law firm or doesn't have lawyers, but you do other things, then by definition, if the RFP says that you have to provide legal services and you don't have the capacity to do that, we have circumscribed already who's going to be able to respond. But that does not preclude us, I think, from still contracting legal services and still contracting with this could be a multifaceted approach. But I just want to make sure that if we narrowly circumscribe what we're looking for, that by definition, a not-for-profit that does not have lawyers or does not do legal work can't respond to the RFP, and then we're basically right back at a law firm, so to speak.
I just had a question following your comment. So does that mean that we need to actually vote to have legal services put in place today? Like, we need to actually have the conversation to add that to the budget, because what you're saying will not be in the next budget unless we decide that like in this budget cycle. So
well, no,
we're legal services separate, then that legal services needs to be named, because those are the services I want to support.
Sure.
Specifically,
we're having
legal services aspect of it, making sure that folks stay in their homes. I'm not discounting the rental assistance, but I'm very clear that that's just paying the landlord, and that's not the position I want us to be in. I really want to be on the advocate side of it. But aside from that, I just want to say, like, if this RFP is breaking it out, and it does break off legal services, because the attorney piece of it is critically important, we need to have the conversation about whether we want to do a separate request for legal services, or if we want to leave it with that RFP. And that's what I'm just want to make sure there's clarity on that.
Absolutely. So the short answer to your question is this is the discussion now, and all of this will inform ultimately our decision. The good news is that we already have a template in place. We are doing legal stuff right now, and nothing precludes us from continuing in that vein. So that template already exists. I don't think anybody's arguing for the cessation of that. And again, floating this RFP does not have to be viewed as doing violence to that either. I mean, they both can exist, and we may very well end up with that with this RFP. But whatever responses we get to the RFP in no way obligates us as a council not to do the legal piece or to reject what comes back from the RFP because we decide it doesn't fit our values or what we want to do. But yeah, all of this discussion, we're doing that today. That's what we're doing right now, is having that discussion. Manager Ferguson, I'll let you, and then Councilmember Caballero, I'll come back to you. I see your hand.
Yeah, just for clarification of how staff receives the feedback, DCM Chadwell is listening, and I think what we have clearly heard the council's interest. As always, when we issue an RFP, I think we're going to try and focus it on meeting all of the objectives and goals that the council has set. We will do our best to capture that. And as always, awarding of these contracts comes before council with a recommendation, not a mandate. So if we go through this process, we will certainly explain how we rate respondents and come to council with a recommendation. If council has questions about our recommendations or prefers to reject our recommendation and go with another vendor, that is absolutely within the council's purview. So I think I can give you all comfort that we've heard this conversation and we'll try and be responsive to it. But I would also remind you that you have the final say. The one piece of direction that I would encourage early on is, if you are looking for something beyond flat funding, and I apologize that I don't have that number in front of me, that would be direction to work somehow into your budget prerogatives, either by discussion at next Friday's budget retreat, or I don't believe it's something, and I apologize, Christine, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't believe we have it on the list for you to vote on in your ranking tomorrow. But if you wanted to increase that funding and prioritize it against your other priorities, that's something I would definitely want to hear at this time. Thank you.
I'm only one council member. I just was stating.
No, but critical voice. I mean, all of us. This is really important that all of our voices are. Councilmember Riss, I thought I saw your hand. Did you put it back
Yeah,
down?
I think the city manager addressed my question. Yeah, I think I'm glad the staff heard the comments. You know, they'll put the RFP together, and again, it'll come back to us eventually, and we'll have a chance to review that. So appreciate that.
I will say that if you know, just for each of us, as myself included, if you've still got millions of dollars of other asks and you want to prioritize this, you might within your own internal space weigh that against what you've already asked for if you want to prioritize eviction diversion. Because I think we're already at 36 million. Assuming that hasn't gone down, whatever we want to increase for eviction diversion, add that to that number. So just something to kind of contour the conversation. Councilmember Baker, I'm sorry, did I see your hand go up, or I'm trying to look at multiple? Okay.
Thank you for the input. We'll proceed accordingly. And with this input, noting to council that we take that input, and to remind that as my exit statement, we will have to also remain fervent to the necessity that this process be competitive. So thank you very much.
Deputy Chadwell, hold fast. Councilmember Baker, did you have something for Deputy Chadwell? And then Councilmember Caballero, I see your hand again.
No, I just I had originally been on the understanding that this is going to be something that we funded. I appreciate the conversations that we've been having. I do think that it's something that, I mean, it's the last line of defense for a lot of folks. If we want to build something into the RFP that provides some additional analysis of outcomes, I think that would make sense. But I do think that we need to adequately fund legal services as well. So, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on that. I just want to see what's happening 6 months later, after court's over. Councilmember Caballero, you had your hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind, it's $350,000 of difference. It's not the full million, because there's $650,000 in base budget. So unless we say we don't want that in the base budget, it's just built in for eviction diversion. Currently, that's what goes to legal aid, right? Like that's where it is. I just want folks to understand that you're not trying to find $1 million. You're trying to find $350,000. That's one. And then DCM Chadwell, is there a way, we have had a lot of success around organizations being able to partner with one another. So if one set has this, one group has a skill set that the other doesn't, is there a way to structure the RFP?
I envision that we address that by giving bidders an opportunity to collaborate in that fashion.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, this has been a great discussion. Listen, I'm always talking about this and that, either or. I'm not going to abandon it now. I think a natural outshoot. This is Durham. We talk about root causes. I think a natural and organic outshoot of the root cause conversation is, before you get to court, is there something we can do to prevent you from getting there? I mean, that I think that fits our root cause value. Still need to have the money in place when you do go to court. But if there's something we can do before you get there, before you get arrested, before you get put out, before you're homeless, then I think in Durham fashion, we need to be looking at some of those root cause interventions, which we're always looking for in Durham. But absolutely excellent conversation. Anything else on any of the other ones? Like you, Councilmember Baker, I'm going to read some of you individually as well about some of your asks, some specific questions, all excellent ideas. I'll say my only, as I said at the retreat, I would ask that we just ask, is this something new, or is this something that already has a home? Because my sense in reading some of the requests is, some of those things I'd like to know if staff already has the capacity to do them. Small area planning, whatever it may be. Some of the things you asked for have already natural homes. I'm interested in hearing what the HEART program, what Ryan's plan is to data-driven in a sensible way to ratchet up and escalate to the point where we're 24/7, rather than kind of, insisting that they do it now when they've already gotten the charge to do it. So I'm interested in hearing those kind of conversations, but I'm not against anything that I've seen on the list, but I do have some questions. Councilmember Freeman, I think you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to check in with folks to see if there was any interest. I know that Councilmember Baker removed his housing plan request, and I wanted to see if folks were interested in it being added back. I know it was a small amount, it's about 150,000. And
I was actually asking because
that
there's
goes along
several.
with the economic plan that he had mentioned.
Yeah, I was curious because it looks like this is the original list that we got, and some people collapsed their items, some people took their items out. And maybe I need to go to the tool itself and that it's already been done for us. I just didn't know because the table
I think the email that Christina sent with the voting, whatever instructions, I think she sent an updated list of requests. I think, because I'm looking at, for example, the guaranteed income has a Middleton risk together that collapsed that one. So I think if that's the one are you looking at that one?
Yeah, I see it now. It's Caballero Cook. I see that now. Okay, so
yeah,
it went from 37 to 31.
I think that's right.
Okay, so, and then is there a way, this is for staff, so there's a number of these, fare-free buses, to Councilmember Middleton's point, HART expansion of some kind, where there's that additional layer provided by staff, I think some of the CIP items. And we raised this during our retreat. In other years, council members, I mean, I certainly have withdrawn requests when I knew that it was coming from staff and likely like that it was, at least at that point, kind of prioritized in a higher manner. Is there a way for us with our prioritization to say, you know, this is a priority that I have from one of the staff asks, right? Because then it's basically a larger number than it actually is, right? Like if the thing that I'm asking for is 2 million, but it's the same thing that staff is asking for, and we're saying it's 4 million, it's not 4 million, it's 2 million. And I think that would help our prioritization as well. But then I don't want to take it out and it's then seen as, well, it wasn't a priority for you, so it didn't move forward, because that's just not how I feel. So I would love some clarification on how, and if you want us to rank the ones that are just ours and then put it in an email saying, hey, these are the ones that were brought, that we know staff have also brought forward, happy to do that. But I would love some guidance. Thank you.
I'm happy to address that and also invite Director Royden to represent sort of the ranking process. So I'll reiterate, I think, how I sort of addressed this last Friday, which is for me as the person who I think will be digesting the council's ranked priorities, it is helpful to see what you choose from this list to be at the top, regardless of whether or not staff may have also requested an item that is similar or identical to council's request. It is, council's feedback and guidance at this point in the process is telling me where your priorities are. A department may have asked for something similar and assigned a different value to it. But I'm going to be looking at them more from a technical standpoint rather than my personal objectives or opinions. However, council's objectives and opinions are very, very compelling to me. So I will also reiterate that, I think we ask you guys as a sense to try and get a matter of scope to assign dollar values to your asks, but we don't hold you to those as much as we do the concepts. I think the dollar values are really for you to educate each other, especially for things that may not be staff oriented. So I would say for requests like HART, I'd encourage you to not focus on the dollar amount, but focus on the concept. And if the concept of the council member proposal, which in this case was 24/7 HART coverage, then I would still encourage you to place that in the priority list wherever you would place it, without a lot of consideration of whether or not the department is asking. I would say the same for all of the other requests, just given that what I really need to hear from you is, if you come back and say something is your number one priority, that's going to be very instructive to me. Doesn't mean I can do it. Doesn't mean I can pay for it. Does mean I'm going to pay a lot of attention to the fact that council told me that. So I think, I don't know if that's as exact of an answer as you want, but I think that's as close as I can get. The most important thing to me in this exercise is seeing what rises to the top of council's list, not quite so much the detail that you included in the ask. I think I can interpret your suggestions and these conversations to get to the meat of what the final ask is. And don't forget, as Mayor Pro Tem has reminded all of us several times, to me, there's a very important part of this, which is next Friday's discussion. So The objectives are going to inform a council conversation where your vote will then lead us to talk about, okay, tell us more about this. Staff may ask you to tell us more about it. We may have thoughts on, okay, at this point that number may be high or that number may be low. And so this voting exercise still leads to another conversation. I'll leave it there. And I see Christina may also have something to add.
Director Reardon? Sure.
Yes, sorry about that. And I'm having trouble turning on my camera. I think that I'm being blocked so I apologize for not being on camera. Okay, I can start my video. But I was just going to reiterate what the city manager said. We, as far as budget is concerned, we have not vetted any of the numbers that are in there as well, too. So those are numbers that were provided by council members. So we realized that, you use the information you had. I'm also happy to talk about the prioritization and the way it's going to be done, if that's helpful for folks as well, too. So I can talk about kind of how the tool works.
Thank you, Director. Councilmember Riss, was your hand up or did?
Yeah. So, and just to Ms. Reardon's point and actually Bo's comments. So I just pulled up the tool and I see, Ms. Reardon, that what you've asked us to do is essentially, it doesn't have numbers attached. It just has the idea, right? So and that's kind of what Bo was saying. You want us to prioritize the concept. It's not like we're ranking it with like ideas and numbers attached, and then we have a list and we say like, oh, we can only take the top two because that's where all the dollars are. So you're asking for a prioritized list of the concepts behind these ideas, which I think, so that's helpful to me. I can do that exercise regardless of whether it may be something that a department is going to do or not. I can do that, and then we'll, as you said, on next Friday, we'll come together with that list and maybe some additional sense of numbers from budget and go from there. So I think that makes sense, and I feel clear about the exercise.
Yes, and I think that's a bit of a change from where we were in the past.
Right. Thank you so much, colleagues. I do want to answer, Councilmember Freeman put a direct question that I want to answer regarding Councilmember Baker's housing plan, put it back on. And my answer is no, and here's why. I trust each of you. My assumption is that Councilmember Baker withdrew it for a reason, that he none of you, all of you are highly intelligent folk. And my assumption is that through your reckoning, if you decided to pull something off, there's a reason for it. I'm not going to second guess any of you. It could be that the departments might have, and we're also, to the manager's point, we also have the wherewithal as council members to ask staff to as part of their assessment as to their capacity to do what we're asking within their existing personnel levels, within their existing. It may very well be, as I've said, that these are things that can be done, particularly if they already have a home in our org chart without money attached to it. Maybe, maybe not. But at least making that assessment or asking those questions can be part of our methodology as we move forward. So I appreciate the staff kind of contextualizing this for us. And if one of you says, okay, I take that off, I'm not going to try and talk you out of not taking it off, because my assumption is that you've given it thorough thought and you've considered what your colleagues have said, and there's a reason why you've done it. I have people saying, you should ask for $2 million for guaranteed income, or $3 million. So there's always, but no, let's get it started. When it finds a home, then let it go from there. And finally, the final example, I already know that Hart understands that we want them to be 24/7. I think that there are some battles that have already been fought and already won. This is no longer a political issue. This is no longer, that bridge has been built. And I trust, Hart understands that it is the will of this council. It's the will of the people of Durham for it to be 24/7. When we get there and what that looks like, I want that to be deliberate and data driven and not messy or rushed or hurried, that the growth is organic and natural, but it is no longer a controversy whether or not it's going to be 24/7. So when I see areas like that, when we're having budget deliberations, at least for me as one council member, as Councilmember Freeman says, I'm just one council member, but that's a victory we've already won. We don't have to fight that war anymore. It's going to be 24/7. No one's against that, which for me leaves us room to direct our energy and ingenuity and creativity to other areas and fighting battles that are still, such as, are we going to increase eviction diversion funding and what that RFP is going to look like. So I look forward to the conversation at the next retreat. I'm going to follow suit with Councilmember Baker, and I thank him for the standard of just reaching out to each other and talk to each other with questions we may have about some of our asks. And I'm going to follow suit in doing that.
Thank you for that answer. I appreciate that, but I do want to just note that when we're talking about an economic plan, acknowledging that there's a housing crisis, if we're not looking at where our housing stock is, we have the chance of creating a bigger issue. And so I do want to just put an emphasis on, if we're doing an economic plan, an economic development plan, there has to be some assessment of what housing stock looks like in our city. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a budget item, but I do want to be clear that it would be irresponsible of us to set a housing economic plan in place and not have a housing plan in place, knowing we have a housing crisis. That's all. Affordable housing. Affordability housing crisis. But people being able to afford, being kicked out, evicted, whatever, all of that is tied into the economic development. And as we move forward, if we push a plan without that, it's going to be lopsided.
I don't disagree with you. My comment is just, I believe that Member Baker knows everything you just said, is my point. My point is my trust in each of you with your intellectual rigor to make your own decisions, whether to put something on or pull something off. That was the only thing. And I know Councilmember Caballero is working on a very robust housing discussion in our city. Again, to my standard, does it already exist? Does it have a home? And does it allow us to focus our energy in other areas? So for me, as one council member. Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to what Councilmember Freeman said. The plan's already being funded and it should be released. So HRNA has been contracted with. That was a chamber. It's actually a good example of how the city, the county, and philanthropic dollars can work together. So the Chamber Foundation, the county, and the city all went in, I think, $25,000 each. HRNA has been hired. They have been doing the initial analysis, and I think currently are holding focus groups. And you all should be getting an invitation because that presentation should be, I think it's April 9th is the day that we have reserved for that information to come out. And it's not just a static plan. The tool that they're building is something that is dynamic. And so can be, as markets change, as things change, it can be nimble in that way. So I just wanted to share that.
They are including our community partners like Duke and UNC, NC Central.
Yeah, Duke has actually been, well, in the broader housing group, the one that I've been leading since September, Duke, Central, Durham Tech, DPS, the county, Alliance Health.
It would be good to get an update.
Durham can.
A report.
Well, you're getting an invitation for April 9th to hear the group's short-term recommendation.
I mean this for
no, everybody, all council members are going to get an invitation for April 9th.
To make sure people know.
The idea is that they will be presenting the full report in the fall to both city, county, and schools.
You're talking about in their.
The folks who are drafting the recommendations, all of the different partners, the goal is to spend the summer after folks have turned in their short, medium, and long-term recommendations. And happy to have this conversation offline so we're not taking more time.
I think it's really good for the public to know. Yeah,
yeah. The idea is that folks would come in the fall to share to all three governing bodies, because it's not just about the city if we're talking about housing. It's a lot of different folks who have to talk about housing.
Council members, thank you. Really important issue, a critical issue. Colleagues, I want to, I'm a firm believer. I want to give each of you absolutely every opportunity to exhaust any questions or concern you may have. You each have a vote when this thing comes up, and I want you to be satisfied that you've done your due diligence in examining. But my sense is that we may be at a stopping point here. We've got some deliverable or to-do lists in terms of talking to each other, and we've got a critical discussion at our next retreat. But I'm not ending this. I'm asking, are there any other areas of exploration or inquiry you have for this part of the discussion?
That's all I've got.
Council members, colleagues. Mr. Manager or Director, did you have anything else you wanted to reiterate for this?
No, thank you. Very, very good conversation, and appreciate all the thoughtful feedback. We're listening.
Colleagues, I appreciate your passion, each of you, and your concern that you brought to this conversation. These are big things. These are big issues. A lot of people are counting on us to get it right, or at least struggle to get it right, grow at getting it right. With that, I'm going to end this discussion, look forward to the continuing discussion around these matters. And with that, I believe we can settle the agenda, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Appreciate the strong meeting today. Have for settling our agenda on consent items 1 through 20, on GBA public hearings, item 23. That is my summary of the agenda.
I concur. All right. With that said, colleagues, thank you for a great meeting. We send our best wishes out to Mayor Williams, who's traveling. Wish him safety in his travels. Regards to Councilmember Cook, who had to depart early as well. And my thanks to each of you for the passion you bring to this work. I'm very proud as a resident and a citizen of this city, of this council. That's it. With that, it's Thursday, February 20th, 4:20 p.m. I'm going to adjourn the work session, 4:20 p.m. During this work
Mayor
session.
Pro Tem?
Yes.
Hey, it's the city attorney. Can you call the vote on the agenda?
My
settle
bad.
the agenda?
Yeah, let's why don't we do that? I'll entertain a motion to settle the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion and second is heard to settle the agenda. Move to settle. Call for a vote to settle. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the agenda is settled. It is now 4:21 on Thursday, February 20th. I'm going to call this work session of the Durham City Council to a close. Have a great day. Be warm, be safe, everybody.
Thanks for leading us, Mayor Pro Tem.